been taking is making me paranoid. I feel like thousands of people are listening to me every week.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Chad McCanna.
And I am your delightful female sidekick, Chatty Ann.
We really were scraping the bottom of the barrel on that one, weren't we?
Yeah, we might want to change that to Hyle Russell.
Mm-hmm. Rolls off the tongue.
Yes.
Welcome to part 2 of our Donkey Kong Country 2 Spotlight. This is the second of 3 parts because, as with anything important, it needs to be a trilogy.
That's right. Otherwise, how will you know it's epic?
Right. This is also part of the Donkey Kong shared universe, which is also very in vogue these days.
That's right. Yes. This is actually same universe as the Pod DK cast.
Well, I didn't mean the DK Vine shared, but yeah. At any rate, we spent last week's episode not only taking some of your calls, with waxing nostalgic about the game, memories, anecdotes, that kind of thing. We have a few more of those to play at the end of this week's episode. But we also talked a lot about the developmental lead up to what we ultimately got in Donkey Kong Country 2, which is information that Greg Mayles, the lead designer on the game, had only recently started tweeting in the last few weeks, and so it's interesting that it lined not interesting. It lined up perfectly because of the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, God, we got really lucky, didn't we?
It's funny how calendars work.
Right.
No.
Everything's divisible by 5 at some point.
It's true. Yeah. But it's really cool to, I don't know, we found a little bit more actually in the last week or so. Just the other day, he tweeted this amazing artwork that it looks to be like actual sketches of Diddy and Dixie from Miyamoto himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or at least some of his team. It was sort of unclear, but they're covered in either hiragana, katakana, kanji. I can't tell the difference, but it's Japanese print. And Diddy and Dixie have this kind of like glazed over, half-lidded, like either 90s disengaged sort of look, or they're just fucking high.
Yeah, which again could go in with the 90s disengaged look. I mean, who among us hasn't blazed up while listening to Soundgarden, right?
It's basically the Kong version of the end credits on that Simpsons Lollapalooza episode, where it's just like those disinterested teens swaying.
Which honestly, as a child of the 90s, that is the first time I heard of like the majority of those bands. Was that Simpsons episode, because I was not like plugged into at least the music scene of the 90s. So
yeah, I still the Potato Man gag is still one of my all-time favorites.
I don't remember that, but this is not the Flying Hellfish newsletter, so we will not be discussing obscure.
Had I stuck around
Simpsons
with that, it probably would have turned into a podcast.
I'm sure it would have, although where would have yours? At least we're still getting good Donkey Kong games and great games from Rare in the Donkey Kong universe. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure what you could talk about the Simpsons. Like, they actually had a good episode these last 4 years.
Yeah, it would really just be reminiscing about the Potato Man joke.
It would just be the Potato Man podcast.
Yeah, Potato Man. So, anyway, Hyle, what can we possibly dig into on this episode, if not really beginning with the game itself, and if not going over the behind-the-scenes info from last week?
I'm not prepared. I don't know. No, actually, we're going to talk about. We talked about the lead up, the months before the game, and what was going on with Rare, what was going on in the outside world among the fandom, if you could even call it a fandom at that point. It was more just a bunch of excited kids, but
The opposite kind of kids as the ones from that episode of The Simpsons.
Well, it's weird, like, talking about the fandom of that era, because there really wasn't a gathering. Like, this was, like, early stages of the internet, but there was no, like, DK Vine or no DKC Atlas or no places where the fans could actually really converge and say, we are Donkey Kong Country fans. So,
we are Legion.
When I talk about the fandom, I'm mostly just talking about Elliot and myself.
Right, everyone at your junior high lunch table, basically.
No, I didn't talk about Donkey Kong Country with them. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. You know, everybody was more concerned about like junior high. It was like they're more concerned about Jinko jeans and like this is 1995. So yeah, Jinko jeans and yeah.
They have a great fan base, by the way.
They do. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is going on in 1995. I don't know. Yeah. Bob Dole. I don't know. Okay. So
we already went there last week.
Bob Dole.
Bob Dole doesn't need another Bob Dole impression. Bob Dole says, "Move it along."
Bob Dole's on Viagra.
Okay.
Well, he did a commercial for them.
I remember the blue pill. Didn't it like start as a pet? It doesn't matter.
He got a boner from Britney Spears back when Britney Spears gave people boners. What? Yeah. So, and his dog was with him, and he was like down boy, and he was like because he was talking about. You're just
hijacking this to talk about penile enhancements, aren't you?
Well, baby, I just thought I want to talk about my Willie for a while.
So how did you first learn about Crocodile Isle?
Okay, well, the weekend before the game, I talked about how my Bible for the summer of 1995 was the Donkey Kong Land issue of Nintendo Power.
Right.
So I was able to convince my mom. I think the school had like a fundraiser. This was like first month or so of junior high. They had a fundraiser where you subscribe to magazines and part of the money goes to the school. So Nintendo Power is one of the magazines they offered. So I was able to convince my mom to give me a year subscription to Nintendo Power. And my very first issue was appropriately enough the Donkey Kong Country 2 issue, and it arrived the Friday before the game came out. This would have been like the December 1st or 2nd or whatever. And
so it would have had the first couple stages worth of player's guide in there.
It actually talked about all the stages, all the worlds at least. But it went through a handful of stages, gave you tips and tricks. But it also basically told you about the plot in depth. It told you about the new characters, baddies galore. And so this was just like opening the Ark of the Covenant, except instead of flying and angelic demons that melt your face, just a lot of cool characters designed by Rare. Mm-hmm. So exactly nothing like the Ark of the Covenant then.
Right. There were no meltiness. Were there any that jumped out at you as because my memories are hazy.
I did tell Karen Allen to look away, and what she was doing at Elliot's house that afternoon, I really still don't know to this day.
Yeah,
but
a really strange career turn for her.
Yeah, I think she's still there actually.
She peeked out into the daylight for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, said, "Nope, not for me." Back to Elliot's.
Still in Elliot's sandbox, just staring wistfully at the pail.
So, when you got to finally see some of the actual in-game elements that weren't just on these cryptic screenshots, did anything leap out at you?
Absolutely. Well, okay, so Elliot got his magazine first. Actually, that was a really like strange evening because I was like doing something with Elliot that night. I think we're going out to dinner with our families. So I went to his house after school. His Nintendo Power arrived, and I knew my Nintendo Power was waiting for me in my mailbox at home. So it was just like we were just pouring through his Nintendo Power.
That's so strange to me that like how old would you have been here? 11?
11, yeah.
11. That as an 11-year-old you had like a double friend date with their parent. Like it's a very strange thing, you know.
No, I mean my parents were friends with his parents, so it was more like, hey, let's all go out. Yeah.
Okay. It was okay. So it's more like the South Park families dynamic, as opposed to like the connective tissue here is that there are two 11-year-olds that like to play video games together, and these adults who have nothing to do with each other just have to all go to dinner together.
No, that would be if our families went to dinner together, Chad.
Yeah, let's never attempt that.
No, absolutely not. It was a very strange dinner. We went to a seafood restaurant, I remember, and this was back when I still ate critters from the sea. And I just remember all we could talk about was Donkey Kong Country 2, I'm sure to the pleasure of the adults. But so we started pouring through the Nintendo Power, and this was the cover that had Diddy, Dixie, and Squawks on the cover. It was in one of the Lost World Jungle stages. That was the render on this cover of the December issue of Nintendo Power, 1995. And so I don't even think it registered that. I know we saw Squawks on the cover, but it's that weird render of him where it looks like he's got a mohawk where his wing is behind him, and it makes it look like he's. And so I didn't register it as the same Squawks. I just thought it was a similarly looking bird, maybe a new enemy in the game. But so we flipped it open. The first thing that leapt out at me was Crocodile Isle. Because that was the big spread. It was like, welcome to Crocodile Isle. And up until this point, this was something I was going to bring up last week, but forgot. I had been operating under the assumption Donkey Kong Country 2 was going to take place on the backside of Donkey Kong Island. And yeah, because it just seemed like Donkey Kong, in the first game, first Donkey Kong Country, it seemed like an oversight to me. It was like, well, what about the back of the island? We haven't been to the back of the island. Surely there must be something cool on the back of the island.
And, hey, Yoshi's Island, let us see what's back there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought like after Chim Caverns, like you were gonna like jump down and like the map screen would flip around, even though this is like a static pre-rendered image. Your child brain doesn't rationalize that way. And so I was like, wait, we're going to the pirate ship now? Wait, the pirate ship? This is it? So it was kind of disappointing. And so I thought, well, surely then the sequel is going to be the backside of the island. And there's going to be volcanoes and there's going to be all sorts of crazy crap. And no,
you'd have to arguably wait until the second sequel until you got to the backside of the island. Arguably.
Well, no, arguably. Well, yeah, this is interesting because the backside of Donkey Kong Island became this mythical like thing. Like, well, what is the backside of the island? And when Donkey Kong Country 3 came around, I just assumed that the Northern Hemisphere was the backside of the island. And that's a theory I brought to DK Vine and you agreed with. Or maybe you had independently came to that conclusion and we both agreed together. But
I think it came from the whole notion that in the story it says Dixie Kong jumped off of the coast of DK Island, but all that's connected to the Northern Hemisphere,
right,
as depicted in game.
Well, but yeah, so in game doesn't match manual story. So
yeah,
but we operated under that assumption until Donkey Kong 64, and actually, you still operated on. That's where we parted ways on the Northern Hemisphere being the backside of the island, and I started thinking, well, it's obviously an independent landmass now because. Yes, Donkey Kong 64 is the map screen. The overworld is a kind of a 3D map screen, and it's not meant to be at scale, but there's no way the Northern Hemisphere can be represented there. And you were like, yeah, I can. And I don't know if you still agree. I think Donkey Kong Country Returns finally puts it to bed, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know if I still subscribe. Honestly, I haven't thought about it in years.
Honestly, you don't care.
Terms.
Yeah. This is the nitpicky stuff I get off on more than you probably. You're just excited that Goldilocks and Little Bear is DKU. And,
no, I mean, yeah,
that's your pound of flesh for the year.
I like I get more nitpicky about the strange obscura when it relates to characters and world building, but not necessarily completely inconsequential geography.
Yeah, so. And I mean, and none of the DK Vine staff agrees on how the geography is laid out. Cameron Regal made this killer map for us. He has his own vision. I have my own vision. You kind of have your own vision, and it's fine because there's no hard and fast rule that we all have to agree on this. And we're not saying anybody out there has to agree with us. But anyway, that's besides the point.
Besides so Crocodile Isle, at any rate, you were introduced to it by way of this magazine.
Yeah, and this is like
kind of a deluge of information.
This
right?
is a seismic shift in your way of thinking because, okay, until this point, you only have a year of fandom in this universe. But still, if you live and breathe it as hard as I did, then you're thinking the Kremlings are natives of Donkey Kong Island, that they just share the island with them. All of a sudden, no, there's a neighboring island, and this is where they're from. Boom! Your head explodes.
Yeah.
What the hell? Like, suddenly you have to rethink your entire way of imagining this universe. And that's both terrifying, daunting, overwhelming, but exhilarating. And
thankfully though, like in the game itself, obviously the prepubescent wheels start turning, and you you try and fit together things that you've seen in the past with all this new information. But whereas other games may have just let the fans kind of fill in the details, DKC2 did to an extent, but there is a lot of very what's obvious. It has to be intentional world building on display if you look a little bit beneath the surface.
We know a lot of the world building came from Greg Mayles himself, just based on his sketches. And we know that like these are just ideas that came almost fully formed from his brain. And I know the rest of the team contributed bits and bobs here and there, but I really do think like a lot of the just lore hinted at about the Kremlings and their nature with the Kongs probably came from Greg Mayles. And he seems to really like, well, again, we've talked about his love for pirates, but I think a lot of the aesthetics of the Donkey Kong Country series just come from things he liked growing up. And
so speaking of the pirates themselves, was this the first exposure that you had? Like in that Donkey Kong Land issue that we talked about previously, did they betray the pirate secret at all?
They didn't mention the Kremlings were pirates. I mean, you had the what we came to know as Crow, but he looked just looked like a Necky wearing a pirate hat. You had all these elements, but you didn't put it together that the Kremlings are going to be pirate themed in this game. And so to have it all spelled out that not only was King K. Rool back, he was calling himself Captain K. Rool, and he's rebranded the Kremlings as pirates. That was pretty cool too. And up until this point, I had never really considered pirates as anything to be interested in. I mean, this was the mid '90s. I don't think there was. There's
you weren't raised on either that or the Goonies, were you?
No, and the Goonies is something I didn't see until probably my late teens. It's just something that completely escaped my radar, and I think it's just because none of my circle of friends had ever watched the Goonies. Like they were Star Wars fans, there was Indiana Jones fans, E.T., like all those movies, the Spielbergian movies of that era, George Lucas. Everything but the Goonies. I didn't know the Goonies was a thing until after I'd seen Temple of Doom, and I was like, oh my god, Short Round's in this movie. And then I looked into it, and I was like, oh my god, this was made by Steven Spielberg like a year later.
Yeah.
So,
it's I think who directed? Was it Joe Johnston that directed? But I mean, Spielberg produced certainly.
Yeah. I mean, Spielberg had his tentacles in it, much.
Yeah,
because he is a Lovecraftian elder god.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's something that just complete. So it's not part of my childhood DNA as it is you or a lot of people from our era. But so yeah. Pirates, I didn't have Monkey Island because I wasn't a computer gamer. I played the Oregon Trail at school, and that was about it. So, yeah.
Don't forget Math Blaster or Reader Rabbit.
I never played those, Chad.
Oh, jeez. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I never played Myst or whatever. Sim City is something I definitely played, but that came later. But yeah, so Pirates had just kind of escaped my cultural awareness, and this was about 7 years before Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp and Keira Knightley and Legolas. So this was my introduction to pirates and how cool pirates could be. And it obviously, you can say I like pirates because of Donkey Kong Country 2, but I like pirates because of the Donkey Kong universe and because of Rare and because of Greg Mayles. So that was one thing I was able to tell him at E3. I'm a pirate fan because of you. So
yeah, in a way, he was kind of paying forward his own pirate fanaticism.
Yeah. So that's one reason I'm really looking forward to Sea of Thieves, because it seems like it's the game that they've been building up to for the last 20 years. So, let's talk about the Kremlings as pirates. Let's shift it from just my perspective here. A lot of
it was kind of an interview there for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah. Interview Hyle Russell about his time with Elliot that one Friday night.
Yeah, and you didn't even have to pay $150 to be a silverbacker.
I've paid a lot more than $150 for this site. So a lot of people think that the pirate aesthetic, the pirate theme for the Kremlings is the perfect the perfect identity for them. I mean, would you agree? Like
I think that what the pirate thing has going for it is, I mean, A, it's sort of villainous, so it works well in that sense. But B, it is a cohesive theme in the absence of any others that we've really seen. I mean, you could make a very weak case for the army aesthetic, not the armadillos, but the military institution.
That would
in
be
the
amazing
first
if they just all dressed as armadillos in one game.
wouldn't it? Yeah. They'd be on a roll. But in part 3, there was also very little cohesion in terms of the enemy archetypes. So I think that since the pirate theme is the only one that we've even had, by default, it's the perfect thing for the Kremlings.
I don't know.
To see
in Donkey Kong 64, a few of them dressed as BDSM like bikers.
Yeah, but then you also had Vikings. Kasha was wearing a Viking hat for some reason. It was, you had little flirtations with consistency, but they never quite dove in. If Retro Studios had used a Viking trope with the Kremlings rather than make them snowmads, I think that might have been just as successful, despite the fact that lizards and cold weather aren't good bedfellows. But still, I think that would have it would have probably been stacked up side by side with the pirate notion as a good example of what to do with the Kremlings.
Well, Vikings are essentially just northern pirates, I mean,
yeah, in a way. I guess they have more society and I would say scruples, but like pirates are certainly less organized, more hard
drinking,
not the
hard
right
drinking,
term,
Yeah, I mean,
anarchic.
Yeah, pirates aren't born out of a particular nationality or cultural identity. It's more just, hey, we're a bunch of scoundrels out at sea,
Right.
Let's rape and pillage. Less emphasis on the rape.
At least in this game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, I think, some people think that it's a shame that they didn't stumble upon this pirate identity in the first game, so that's what they could be known as, because a lot of people prefer Captain K. Rool over King K. Rool, and we never get Captain K. Rool. We never get the pirate Kremlings because that's not what they were first introduced as. That's not what most people know them as, or at least the vast majority of people.
See, I would disagree with that. I think that.
Oh yeah, so would I.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just saying. Some people say the hacky thing, like political reporters say. Well, some people are saying.
Some people out there, sources claim that K. Rool should have been a pirate in the first game, but he kind of was, though. He was a king,
he was
but
on
a pirate ship.
Yeah, he was on a pirate ship, but he was dressed as royalty. I mean, yeah, it's.
I'd say that I like that the pirate thing came in the second game, the full deep dive into piracy, because it shows how versatile the Kremlings are. Whereas if they were saddled with this pirate thing from the first game on, that would be it for them.
And honestly, I also, by the way, I do love that the later stage K. Rool's Keep ties into his king persona. Even if his king persona doesn't really appear in the game, it's nice that there is that continuity there, that there is something to pay tribute to that would logically exist in this universe. He's not a pirate 24/7, so
right. And then you go past that into an aviator persona while he's wearing his pirate
right. K. Rool's all over the map. But
you know what I just realized? K. Rool is doing the exact same thing in the first two Donkey Kong Countries that Captain Blubber did in Banjo-Kazooie. He sort of showed up again at the end in a kind of different persona or a different role, and then you see him in the sequel fully embracing that.
Yeah, it's you can definitely tell which Rare teams made this game. Made these games. Another thing that I think should be worth pointing out is the pirate aesthetic kind of fits Diddy's solo game, because if Diddy is in a sense short round from Temple of Doom, then if he gets his own game, of course, is going to be kind of styled a little bit after the Goonies,
Right.
That's something like.
I mean, that's a fairly liberal interpretation of the Ke Huy Quan universe, but
but no, I mean, as far as like the little boy sidekick going out on his own into the world on his own grand adventure, having it be a swashbuckling pirate adventure is something that just fits. It works, and I like that each starring Kong in each country game has a game kind of themed around their sensibilities.
Yeah, and since there was so much emphasis ultimately on Diddy becoming a video game hero, it wouldn't have resonated as much if it was tonally similar to the first game.
But yeah, and that's really what I like about the plot of this game, and that's something like you talk about. Oh, the plot is Donkey Kong is kidnapped and you need to rescue him. But really, the plot is Diddy is trying to become a video game hero, and people have given us some shit over that in recent years. Like, oh, you're just reading too much into that. It's right there in the game.
I mean, there are two plots. One of them is the superficial instigator, and then the second one is the character arc,
which is really like I think the heart and soul of the game. But I mean that's the plot that's still driving the game after you've rescued Donkey Kong. So yeah, we're not reading too much into it. It's what the whole video game hero thing is, with the hero coins and the second screen with Cranky and the Mario and Link and Yoshi.
They're literally called video game hero coins. You know, people call them DK coins, but we wouldn't see proper DK coins until the minecarts on DK64.
Right. This is a stickling point for me. They're called hero coins, goddammit. That's what they were called in this game. That's what they should always be called. Hero coins.
Right. When are you hearing that DK coin crap?
Yeah. So I really, really like the pirate thing, and this is my favorite game of all time, and part of that is just everything works so well. All the elements come together, and I think the pirate like aesthetic and the pirate stronghold island. Well, let's talk about Crocodile Isle just really quickly, because it's a fucking dump. And I love how it's a tropical island, just like Donkey Kong Island, a tropical island with unrealistic elevation. Ridiculously so in this game, because it just goes straight up. I mean,
it's a spire.
Yeah, but it's like, compared to Donkey Kong Island, there's really nothing pleasant about this place.
No, and one of the great things, one of the most visually striking things when you first look at Crocodile Isle is that it's a ship graveyard, essentially. K. Rool has run aground presumably, at least a dozen gangplank galleons on the island.
Not the gangplank galleon. I like to think these ships had other names.
Oh, really? I like to think that he just keeps calling them the gangplank galleon.
Gangplank galleon 7. Yeah. But it's a great running gag, and this is really like
he does the Star Trek thing. He just increments with a letter. This is the gangplank galleon D.
But no, this is like a really great way of showing off how Rare does world building, because there's this detail of K. Rool has wrecked so many goddamn ships into the island, and it's just this great running gag that a lot of people just miss if they're just playing through the game and not really like paying attention to like the details or why things exist the way they exist. I mean, there's even a piece of ship up in Gloomy Gulch, so
that's obviously where you fight Ghost Crow. So.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just I like the notion that he's just such a bad captain that he can wreck a ship that hard.
Right? Like, that's a Richard Alpert level of boat crashing.
Oh God, I am in a lost state of mind. I've been rewatching Lost with my fiance Michelle, and showing Lost to her for the first time, and it's really fun to see like all the Donkey Kong Country-esque elements in the series itself.
It's strange. I mean, you have to be obsessive about both of them to see the connections, but they're unintentional, obviously. But they are.
To be fair, when you get to Series 6, there's a big one, or Season 6, there's a big one where it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
this is Donkey Kong Country 2. This is the end of Donkey Kong Country 2.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, but nothing about the end of Donkey Kong Country 2 right now. Let's focus on the beginning. And when we found out about the animal buddies of the game, because this is something I learned from Nintendo Power, and this is the first notion that I had that this game would not just be a rehash of the original. Not that I would think it would be a rehash in a bad way, but I assume that the same animal buddies would be back, the same Kong helpers would be back, even though they had swapped out Donkey Kong and had Dixie Kong. I was just thinking it was going to be pretty much the same roster of characters.
Well, the model that you would think of is Yoshi, and Yoshi was the main steed in Super Mario World, the only one, really. There were different colors, but of course Yoshi then became a mainstay, and you expect the same.
I don't see color in Yoshi. to me, I mean, all Yoshis are born equal, and if you see color in Yoshi, that's your problem.
You must have been baffled when all of a sudden this monochromatic Yoshi burst wings out of his back and started flying around.
I accepted that Yoshi for who it was.
Fair enough. Some Yoshis like to stomp, some shoot out fireballs, some fly, some are boring. Who are we to judge?
Yeah, we're all beautiful Yoshis, really, at heart.
Anyway. We did see a little of that carryover with, of course, Rambi and On-Guard, who would become the two main series animal buddies, I would say.
Well,
out of any of them.
By Donkey Kong 64, although Rambi's spot was kind of challenged a year from this game.
Yeah.
He was kind of given the boot for a while, which is kind of sacrilegious at this point, now that Rambi's basically all we've got. But yeah.
And,
so
history has not looked too kindly upon Ellie, unfortunately.
But Ellie was in the original Donkey Konga with Rambi, so
and Ellie was going to feature in Donkey Kong Racing.
I know, and I love that Kitty wrote her in Donkey Kong Racing's trailer. That was just a nice shout out to. God damn it!
I
know. So yeah, Rambi and On-Guard are the two animal buddies who are back. I was going to say just as they were, but they do have the supercharged moves now, which was a nice touch, I thought. And
what did you make, though, of a much larger Squawks along with these new ones? Like, did you think that you would be able to ride Clapper or Glimmer? Like, what was your childhood brain doing with this information?
Well, let's start with Squawks. I was shocked that Squawks was back and that you could ride Squawks, because Squawks was a nothing animal buddy in the original. He carried a flashlight in that one level. Torchlight
That's an
Trouble.
Important task, There are no small parts, just small parrots.
Okay. But to suddenly have him boosted in such a vital role, and I would argue that Squawks was more important than Rambi and On-Guard in the trilogy from here on out. You have more memorable stages with Squawks than I think either one of them.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, yeah, I think that certainly in terms of completing the adventure, Squawks is possibly the only one that's vital. So I'm thinking in Animal Antics, of course, Squawks is the gatekeeper to defeating Screech, and no one else can get through that maze. Okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm thinking about the end game, but anyway,
I was gonna say you don't raise Screech in Animal Antics.
Right. Squawks, though, does bring the fact that he can fly in all directions, introduces much more interesting level design possibilities.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And we saw from Greg Mail's notes that he had just a random bird in there as his idea. And I guess at some point they said, well, why don't we just make it Squawks? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So they did, Squawks did grow a bit over the last year. So you can say that's continuity, that he grew up. You can say that they just had to make him larger to fit the characters. I prefer the former. I understand if you'll go with the latter, but hey.
It gets... Character size always gets kind of messy in video games. If you look at Tip Top or even Squawks himself, who shrinks back down by the time Donkey Kong Country Returns rolls around. So
or K. Rool in Donkey Kong Land when he's smaller than Diddy.
Yeah, there's that too.
He was just punching over really hard that day.
I'd say outside of like a full-on redesign that's obviously intentional, like Tiny Kong, maybe we shouldn't try and hinge too much fanon on these appearances.
I like the idea that he had a growth spurt and was able to carry around Diddy and Dixie at this point.
Okay.
There's no harm in it. I'm not like, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not committing acts of violence and or molestation. So what's the harm?
Mm-mm. I don't know. You're molesting my mental image of that parrot's growth cycle. So,
Oh God, I'm so sorry, Chad.
yeah, it's all right.
But yeah, so I would say at this point though, and you alluded to Rambi and Angard becoming like the two mainstays, but Squawks really became the third animal buddy of the holy trinity of animal buddies from this point on. Like this game made Squawks, and even though Squawks isn't rideable or hasn't been rideable for years, he's usually featured in games. If Rambi is or if Angard is, your chances are you're going to see at least two out of those three. And Squawks still plays a role in the retro games, and that's quite honestly that's surprising given how few returning characters they use.
Well, between the three of those animal buddies, of course, you've got land, air, and sea covered in terms of powered up gameplay,
and
those are the ones that you really need. And the other. Like Squitter, by the way, we should spend some dedicated time talking about this goddamn spider.
We're going to talk the fuck out of Squitter.
Because Squitter is probably my favorite animal buddy. I think he does the most interesting things, not only from a gameplay point of view, but it's such a batshit crazy notion that there's this giant spider wearing 8 sneakers.
What's the Facebook page you really like?
That cool-ass spider with the sneakers from DKC2. I think. I think it's there's a Facebook fan page that I stumbled on years ago.
That cool-ass spider with the sneakers from Donkey Kong Country 2. It's a community on Facebook, and 168 people are part of the community. And actually,
I haven't been there in years. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, on November 22nd, that cool-ass spider with the sneakers from Donkey Kong Country 2 commented. They simply said, "Dank as fuck." May, and then before that, May 8th, 2013, that cool ass spider with the sneakers from Donkey Kong Country 2 said, "Good ass weed."
What?
3 years before that, he said, "Spittin' webs."
Oh, I remember that. Spitan, Spittan.
By the way, I'm going through and I'm liking all of these as DK Vine right now.
As well you should.
Yeah.
I hope we can drive some traffic to that fan page. This is just as baffling of like a cultural crossover as those crazy vector art images that we found of Kanye West and his posse hanging out with Lanky Kong.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand who these hip-hop or weed culture / Donkey Kong fans are, but I love that this extremely specific middle slice of a Venn diagram exists online.
Freddy YOLO 420.
Right.
By the way, it should be pointed out that cool ass spider with the sneakers from Donkey Kong Country 2 also has 2 photos in their album, and it's just the identical render of Squitter both times.
They uploaded an extra one for good measure.
It's a work of art, quite honestly. Okay, so, but yeah, anyway, so yeah, Squawks and Guard Rambley, land, sea, and air, and really, Squawks kind of displaced poor Espresso, at least for a good long while. Because, honestly,
Espresso displaced poor Espresso.
Yeah,
I've been playing DKC and for this Twitch thing, and there was the Espresso stage where it really came to a head was on Orangutan Gang. And one of Espresso's moves is that he can walk over top of claptraps, only not consistently. I still got injured by walking over a claptrap. So it's like even the very few things that Espresso brings to the table, he really doesn't bring to the table.
Yeah. But okay, so still though, I expected Espresso to come back because I loved Espresso. I mean, even though like he didn't really
and Cranky both.
He didn't really provide great gameplay. Espresso and Winky were part of the original game. And I mean, every kid who played Donkey Kong Country loved the fuck out of Winky, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Winky, people loved him.
Little boys did anyway. They loved
He's a giant tree frog that you ride
big
around.
Old frog. Yeah.
I mean, that's right up a 10-year-old's alley, But yeah, they were both removed from this game. Well, sort of. I mean, you have to qualify both of them. Both of them eventually made it in the game in one form or another, but essentially they were removed as playable characters in the SNES version, at least.
Right.
And that was shock. That was like something I had to like brace myself like against the wall at Elliot's house. I was like, I can't breathe. Wakey and Espresso are gone. But you know what? It was also thrilling. And it was thrilling because... Shut up, Chad. I'm getting excited about Donkey Kong Country 2.
You are going through such an emotional roller coaster as an 11-year-old for no reason. I fucking love this.
I was 12 at this point.
Oh, okay. So, apologies. You'd clearly matured into your perspective of the world.
I've never grown from 12 years old from that point. No, but it was thrilling because the fact that we would lose characters in sequels, and I always held out hope that we would see Winky and Espresso again, or that characters who would be retired, quote unquote, would come back, and we got characters back over time, but it was exciting because you never knew what new characters you're going to get and what characters would return. Suddenly, it was always open-ended in going into a new game, and that was exciting. Who is going to be back? Who is going to be new? And that added a whole nother element that I hadn't foreseen up until this issue of Nintendo Power. It's really weird.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the new animal buddies.
Well, I thought we were.
Okay.
We've gone over that cool-ass spider with the sneakers from
Did we?
DKC
Okay.
2.
No. Squitter is my favorite animal buddy as well. And what makes Squitter so dank-ass is that he's basically a platform creator in a platform game. He's basically your own Super Mario Maker within a traditional platformer.
And he's the only projectile. Well, I guess Squawks also has projectile weapons.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about Squawks' eggs real quick. What the hell is that?
I thought they were coconuts for the longest time.
Yeah, we've talked about this, but Squawks is a male bird.
I know.
And birds don't lay eggs from their mouths, so
tell that to Kazooie.
Well, Kazooie. Does Kazooie queef out her eggs, or does she shat them out?
Jesus. You mean for the reverse move? The the tweeter shit. I think is what it was called in one of the early sketches.
I guess that answers the question then.
Yeah. Yep. It's a cloaca though, so it really doesn't matter with a bird.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
Yeah. All the same orifice.
So yeah, I think we've talked about this before, and one of the conclusions I arrived at is Squawks just steals from other birds' nest and just like carries a bunch of eggs in his mouth. Squawks is really a terrible person.
Perhaps he just has high estrogen hormone levels, it's sort of like the way that men can lactate. Maybe male birds can make unfertilized eggs. I'm spitballing here. Obviously, there's probably no amount of hormones that can generate a zygote from a different gender inside the body, but who knows?
Maybe the Kongs go to the supermarket and they get a bunch of free range eggs because they're kind like that, and they shove them in Squawks' mouth. But okay, so let's back to Squitter. Yeah, Squitter is like the most inventive thing about this game.
There are a lot of inventive things about this game. The most inventive thing.
Okay. I mean, no, Squitter is so much fun to play as. And it can be frustrating at times when the screen starts to lag. Webb Woods, I'm looking at you. But, I mean, honestly,
I say Webb Woods lags more due to the layer of smoke and the number of sprites on the screen, which, yes, Squitter contributes to a little bit with his attacks and whatnot. But, I don't know. I wouldn't blame that entirely on playing as Squitter. And it only happens in a few places. It's not as persistent as you might think.
I remember when Webb Woods lagged when Elliot and I were playing it, and I was such a hardcore cultist about this game that I refused to blame the game itself. I said, well, obviously the Super Nintendo just can't handle this game.
there's something to that argument, you know.
I know, but it's such a bullshit argument because obviously you want to make a game that the Super Nintendo can handle.
Yes. I mean, you were literally describing what was happening, but maybe it's not the hardware's fault for a game developed for the hardware.
It's just like being like in a brainwashed political bubble and being like, well, this is the way I believe. I don't care. Reality be damned. I'm making my own reality. And
it's really the slowdown is... It's really not that disruptive compared to some of the other frame rate issues we've seen from Rare, like Conker's Bad Fur Day on the 64, for example.
Yeah, and honestly, you can actually use it to your benefit at times, especially when things got really, really frenzied.
Because it did that thing where it would actually slow down the actions of the game. It's like the time between frames was longer, as opposed to just dropping the frames.
It was essentially bullet time.
Yeah.
So Squitter, I mean, amazing. To this day, he is the animal buddy I want back the most. And if Retro makes a third Donkey Kong Country game, as they should, but I'm not going to hold it against them if they don't make it right away. Squitter's got to come back. I mean, everybody's campaigning for the Kremlings, and that's great, as they should. We got to get a little Squitter action in there too. Got to send some love for Squitter.
Yeah, and I love the way that he controlled as well. You know, he had there was a lot going on with that animal buddy. You had 2 different varieties of web that you would shoot. You had, you know, one of them had a secondary function, which was to spread it out to make a platform. A lot going on, and you'd have to be able to mount the character, and yet it all kind of makes perfect sense when you play it.
Yeah, and it's really intuitive, you know. And you wouldn't think it would be, especially because the concept is hard to explain, especially to a 10 to 12-year-old, you know, or whoever the age range play, especially younger gamers. I can't even imagine playing this game as like a 5-year-old or younger. I mean, I know we have listeners who no doubt did so, but
hey, just put a giant letter shaped out of bananas, and that's all we needed in those days.
Yeah, I remember when Donkey Kong Land 2 rolled around, how hard it was to get a handle on Squitter's control because it was radically different. Because
you had to press select to form those webs.
You had to do it with less buttons because of the Game Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, Radley. Radley was the other big rideable animal buddy from this game that was new, and he was more of an obvious replacement for Winky than I think Squawks or anybody was a replacement for Espresso.
Right.
And obviously they replaced Winky because the hit detection wasn't that great for Winky in Donkey Kong Country. And yeah, everybody loved the character, but they decided they needed to have a more precise jumping character, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was more about, I think, the movement when you're on the ground, which with Winky, it was as if your hitbox is just moving along the floor, but the character's sprite is sort of bouncing, doing little hops above the ground. So it's very difficult to tell when you are or are not making contact with the ground and can actually jump off of it. Whereas Ratley's entire character would actually bounce, both the hitbox that interacts with the world and the sprite that's sort of grafted on top of it. And that made you feel like there's a lot more control. You also could take advantage of essentially a roll jump, where if you had Ratley bounce out into the air, you could still jump from off of that little hop, regardless of whether or not you're standing on nothingness. Which made him, with those 2 little tweaks, I think it made the character so much easier to play than Winky was. I don't know if, we can discuss the wisdom of whether or not they could have used Winky.
Yeah, I was going to say, couldn't they have just tweaked Winky like they tweaked other animal buddies in this game?
Yeah, technically.
Probably. I don't care because I love Radley. He's not like my top favorite like Squitter, but I mean, I obviously have an affection for all these characters, so it's pointless to say, well, I love Radley. Oh, I love this.
Mm-hmm. It's strange though because it's the exact same thing that we got really up in arms with in Jungle Beat about Hoofer, who's essentially an XP of Rambi.
Okay, but when you have the creators of Winky making a new character, that's one thing. When you have people from a different studio shit-talking the characters from Donkey Kong Country and then saying your characters are more fresh, that's going to create natural hostility. Okay. That's a whole different scenario.
That's a fair point.
And they even had a character in this game saying how much he preferred Winky and Espresso. So, I mean, they threw the fans of those characters a bone,
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything notable to say about Clapper or Glimmer?
I love Clapper and Glimmer. But
that's notable.
So these are two animal buddies who they're kind of like squawks in that they're non-rideable animal buddies who still serve a function in this level. Obviously, Glimmer is just the new Squawks in that he serves the exact same purpose as Squawks did in the original Donkey Kong Country, except you're underwater. And it's weird about Glimmer, though, because I was looking it up. Apparently, like anglerfishes, the type of anglerfish that Glimmer is, he would have to be a female, but he's referred to as a male. So...
Yeah, the male anglerfish are little teeny tiny. It's sort of like the same discrepancy that you get with spiders. The males are almost parasitic in a way, following along, eating the scraps of whatever the female has left behind. But lads.
Hey, is that why? Yeah. Is that a scrap 69 when they're following and eating with the female? Anyway,
so. Yeah, so you're right. There is a bit of a gender issue with Glimmer.
Of course, it can be like the Kongs. It can be like the Kongs, where you say this is a different evolutionary branch of anglerfish, where the males have grown to a certain size. Obviously, we're playing fast and loose with nature here, so what does it matter?
All right. Who's to say he is an anglerfish? Maybe he is a Glimmer, or I don't know.
This is Glimmer's one and only appearance. He appeared on the box art of Donkey Kong Land 2, but the Glimmer's galleon stage in that game was all done with light barrels. They invented a new mechanism for it. So yeah, Glimmer doesn't get much love. And in my headcanon, he's friends with Engard. And by the way, it said in this Nintendo Power issue, I could be wrong, but this is what I remember, that these four new animal buddies are natives of Crocodile Isle. And I have always stuck with that. Whether you can say that's canon or not, I've stuck with that as my headcanon. And
I remember that notion. I didn't know where it was from, but I guess that
unless it's from the manual itself. And you have the manual in front of you, so maybe that's something we can figure out here over the course of this episode. But I like this idea that there's non-Kremling crew affiliated animals on Crocodile Isle, and the Kongs befriended them. And at the end of the game, spoiler alert, when the island sinks, they move back to Donkey Kong Island with the rest. And so it's my headcanon that Glimmer lives with Engard and they're friends.
And then, of course, we would meet another Glimmer-esque character in DK64 that we started naming Glower, which was
Glower the tadpole, yeah.
Yeah, a tadpole that had that... he had one of those miner's helmets grafted onto his head. Grafted. He was wearing it. He was using a miner's helmet, as miner helmets are typically used.
They welded it onto his head. Yeah, the Kongs are very cruel and unusual. Glimmer.
Oh, by the way, I'm on the Animal Friends page in the instruction booklet, and it says, it seems that Diddy and Dixie will not be alone on their quest. First of all, Rambi, Engard, and Squawks return to add their animal abilities to the effort. A handful of new animals also make their debut on Crocodile Isle. And that's really all it says about their origins.
So it must have been from Nintendo Power then. What's the cranky quote he gives at the
He says right down here, "A more tragic-looking bunch of useless no-hopers you'll never see. I liked Espresso and Winky. Where have they gone?"
And Cranky's
he also calls them no-hopers here, which we'll see come up later, probably on our next episode.
Yeah, I love the Cranky's affection for Winky and Espresso. It's supported in this game, but it's also something that's carried on with 9 years later in the Game Boy Advance port to a ridiculous degree. But
yeah, that or he's just a gambling addict, and Espresso is the best way for him to exercise that.
Although he does come to love Squawks over time. So, yeah, finally there's Clapper. Well, almost finally, there's Clapper. And Clapper affects the elements a lot more than Squawks from the last game or Glimmer ever do. He basically changes the water temperature in 2 stages. And that he can either make scalding hot water passable, like lukewarm, or he can make cold water frozen.
Now, that latter one, the cold water into frozen, of course, we'll touch on that mechanic when we get to that stage in the final world, well, penultimate world. But that's a pretty intense innovation in my mind, that you can turn the water surface into a platformable thing. That's just as significant to me as, well, not just, it's almost as significant as Squitter. The whole idea of playing with what is and isn't a platform is something that this game does so well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like how this game really does reinvent platforming, like, as you're platforming,
It's I think the general tone as we go through the stages themselves will be like, yes, Donkey Kong Country games are, if you boil them down, each stage does sort of have a gimmick that it hangs upon, whether that's
I don't like that term
introduced.
Though. I mean, okay, the term is not bad, inherently bad. You hear gimmick and you think, oh, it's cheap and tawdry. But no, I mean,
a feature. How about a feature?
Okay.
Each stage has a new feature. But what I was going to say is that this game in particular does such a great job of blending those features into the aesthetic of the game to such a degree you don't even feel like it is a gimmick. It just seems like, oh, this is a new thing I'm tangling with, but you're not. It doesn't feel like they're just throwing new shit at you. It all comes across as organic.
I'm sure we'll touch upon that. It's generally this game and its follow-up, which was made by a different team, but still part of the trilogy. It follows this general rule of we're going to reuse an aesthetic, an environment 3 times, but you're going to get the basic one, and then we're going to mix it up in the next 2 times.
Right.
So I mean it's a not like hard and fast rule, but it's definitely more often than not what happens. And so it's interesting how they're able to, you don't think, oh, I'm just repeating the same archetype again. It's oh, this is completely brand new. They really do so much with relatively so little, especially when you compare it to the retro games and what they're capable of doing. It is really remarkable.
They also make a really great job of great use of palette swapping with the environments, because there are some.
I thought you were going to say palette swapping with animal buddies, because that would take us to our final 2.
Right. Yeah, and I guess we'll touch on these as well once we get to Parachute Panic. But
yeah, let's talk about them. So
sure.
Initially, for the longest time, we called these 2 purple parrots from Parachute Panic Squeaks and Flapper, and that's based off a Swanky's Bonus Bonanza quiz. And ultimately, apparently in Japan, they came up with a name for at least one of the purple parrots. I mean, honestly, Nintendo only recognizes 1 purple parrot, but the fact that there is 2 that you have to jump from one to the other, we have to have a name for the other one.
This is a little more involved than just seeing a second on guard.
This is not a hologram, people. This is not a hologram. I repeat. The one time,
yeah, because the level design of Parachute Panic requires you to hop from one to the other, so there are canonically 2 purple parrots there.
And this is actually something too that they kept in the port. It's not like the Game Boy Advance port where the second and guard doesn't even appear. So it's not something they went back and fixed. This is part of the gameplay. So we call them Squeaks and Flapper. In Japan, the purple parrot was called Quawks, which it's not as great of a name, but whatever. So it wasn't that name didn't actually come to the West until Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Peon's mediocre racing game, but it was great with the fan service. And
I was gonna say mediocre is charitable. Have you played that game?
Yeah, I have a little bit.
Really, the only redeeming quality is the fan service,
and
they do a quite good job with it.
It's like the one time outside of Rare that Donkey Kong fans have gotten fan service out the wazoo. So
right,
I have an affection for the game for that. It's just a shame that it was. It
might have been a lot more effective with the original bongo controls, but
which is something I would never say otherwise. But yeah, it was designed for the bongos, and they didn't change the gameplay when they ported it for the Wii, so it just became this weird thing. But yes, squawks and quawks were both items in that game, and so that brought quawks to the West, and so we had to acknowledge it. I mean, we can't just say there was some pushback from some DK Vine stalwarts, people in the forum. They were like, no, the name is Squeaks, just ignore it. And we're like, we can't ignore it. So because of quawks, we couldn't really have Flapper anymore. So it was like, well, let's just have another shitty variation. So we started calling Flapper Squawk. So
right. You're gonna take away the first letter. We'll take away the last letter and see where we land.
We can make just as shitty of a name as Quawks. So Quawks and Squawk, and surprisingly enough, they reappear in Donkey Kong Land 2. They reappear in the sequel, Donkey Kong Country 3, and they popped back up in Barrel Blast. So they actually got a lot more traction than some of the more official animal buddies like Glimmer and Clapper. So
yeah, that's true.
Then Radley did appear on a bridge in Donkey Konga 2, not as an actual character, but he was an engraving on a stone bridge in Donkey Konga 2.
That's something that you may be the only qualified person in the world to really point out.
I like to think that when they had to build a bridge in this area of Big Ape City, and somebody said, well, you need a Radley to cross this section. So they built a bridge, and as tribute to that, they put Radley on the bridge, and they named it the Radley Bridge.
Wow, you've even got a history about the bridge.
Yep.
That's a level of psychosis that I thought might even evade you, but well done.
I'm not a virgin. Can I just say that really quick?
Feel free. Yeah.
Not a virgin.
Yeah, engaged even.
I know. There's hope for us that. So yeah, Winky and Espresso were not in this game, but Winky does appear in the background of the Monkey Museum. And I didn't figure this out because I was like poring over this issue of Nintendo Power. It was late Friday night before I went to bed, and I saw Winky in the glass case in the back of the Monkey Museum. And I was like, Winky's in the game. He's in the background, but he's in the game. Granted, he doesn't move in this game. Mm-hmm. But that's something that's rectified in the Game Boy Advance port 9 years later.
Yeah. Well, I certainly want to spend some decent time talking about the game itself. So I
can talk about Animal Buddies all night, baby.
I know you can. Let's discuss though the new Kongs. You know, were those in this Nintendo Power? That you and Elliot were okay. So what did you make of? Well, obviously, one of the most glaring omissions is that Candy Kong is no longer in the game.
Candy Kong, and we found out when Rareware was established, and we first went there, that Candy Kong was excluded from the game, partly because they felt like her relationship with Donkey kind of interfered with the plot, and also maybe took away from Diddy and Dixie's own relationship. I can kind of see the rationale there. It's kind of like
she may have just been a shit character.
It's a polite way of saying she's a gorilla with big bosoms. Bosoms, yeah, bosom buddies. Yeah. She was really Peter Scolari in drag, and
she couldn't even attain the lofty heights of Tom Hanks in drag.
No, but it's something Billy Joel's My Life. But yeah, so I mean, it was kind of surprising, and this actually made Candy Kong for a brief window of time among, I think, us, it kind of made Candy Kong this like sought after character. We want Candy Kong to come back just to acknowledge Candy Kong again. And she came back in Donkey Kong 64 and she made a lot of blowjob jokes. And it was like, okay, had her fill of Candy Kong. Thanks, Candy.
She, did make a lot of blowjob jokes.
Yeah. So I think Candy Kong is kind of when you're young and dumb and not full of cum. Candy Kong, like the weirdness of the character is kind of lost on you. And then when you hit a certain age, you're like, oh, well. I mean, I'm still like, whatever. I like Candy, but it's...
I was never really sure whether Candy was supposed to be sexy or whether they knew how hideous she was. Like, she looked like a failed Dr. Moreau experiment.
and that would explain why Marlon Brando sits in her tent.
With his little miniature, his little mutant mini-me, yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way, did you know King Jingling and Toots were based on Marlon Brando and Mini Marlon Brando from the island of Dr. Moreau?
I don't know if that's true, but I want to believe.
I'm gonna say I just invented that out of thin air. But it sounds like it could be true.
You know what? Why don't I just pester Steve Mails about it for a while until he just says, yeah, that's what it was. Shut up.
Just post a comparison picture of the two. It's just no explanation, no words, just a comparison picture. See what they say.
Yeah. God, Steve Mails and Ed Bryan, two of the artists on this on the banjo team, at least. I think Ed came on for Kazooie, but Steve was around on this game. They have been the nicest, most they've been the most agreeable to put up with the nonsense that I sling at them on an almost daily basis about this weird obscura. So I'm not trying to say that he would be dismissive.
Hey, we're covering Goldilocks and Little Bear now, so Ed Bryan
and Ukulele. So hey, they're both getting continued coverage thanks to this nonsense.
Yes. I can't wait for 2 weeks from now when we can discuss Goldilocks.
We're gonna have a Goldilocks and Little Bear episode, my friend.
Goldilocks and Little Bear first impressions. It'll be the least viewed episode of the Conversation of all time.
The least viewed would be if we did a Mario Tennis Ultra Smash first impressions.
No, because that would be the morbid train wreck of the whole thing. Like, people would want to show up to see us slag off that game, but
That's
anyway.
true. There'd be a lot of rubbernecking involved there. Although with Goldilocks, I think people may just be curious, like, what the fuck has happened to DK Vine? What are they talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's gonna be a good Christmas episode, I think. So, I mean, Candy Kong. I think Candy Kong, you just have to view her as a piss take. Like, let's just make this outrageously wrong character. And when you view her in that light, it's funny. You can't view her as a sincere character. You know, that's people view her as Crystal, and she's not Crystal. She is a joke character.
Yeah, but after they airlocked her unceremoniously, she was replaced.
Was Laura Roslin in charge of Tokyo Island at this point? What?
No, it was Tori. She walked over, took away Candy's save barrel, gave
her the backhand.
Room.
Yeah. So I guess that means Wrinkly Kong is a Cylon.
It
has been revealed.
And
So yeah, Wrinkly Kong. She is Cranky's wife. Holy shit. Now Cranky mentions his wife in passing in the original game. He said, and this is interesting, and this is how great the continuity of Donkey Kong is. And don't laugh, you at home, or Chad, because
I never laugh. This does not amuse me in the slightest.
In the original Donkey Kong Country, Cranky says, "My wife is coming over in a bit." And you don't really think about it at the time. It's like, are they divorced? Are they separated? Like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. In this game, we find out Wrinkly, for some time, has been teaching the Kremlings on Crocodile Isle. She has opened her own school, Kong College.
And is it just we know that she teaches Kremlings because she complains about it several times, but she's been there a while because K. Rool himself was a student at her school.
Or she tried to educate K. Rool at least.
Sure.
And he was having none of it. Yeah, I think this was like Wrinkly was a school teacher, and she looked at the appalling level of public education on Crocodile Isle, and like somebody going over, overseas to teach, poor impoverished village, like she the goodness of her heart, she decided to go to Crocodile Isle and teach over there. Unfortunately, then Kong-Kremling relations kind of started breaking down a year before this, and so she's
I have
over
a feeling
there.
that Crocodile Isle, when she first approached it, may have been much like, let's say, the Disney depiction of Neverland from Peter Pan, where it's sort of like do as you will, or maybe a better example would be in Disney's Pinocchio, that place where all the bad little boys would go, where they smoke cigars and they drink and ultimately turn into donkeys. But then fast forward that kind of attitude about your environment by 100 years, much less a civilization's length, and it turns into just the complete anarchic mess that Crocodile Isle was.
Yeah, see, I always viewed it as like maybe like the U.S. and the Soviet Union circa maybe like 1988 or so, except instead of like the Berlin Wall coming down and the relations just completely thawing, things take a turn for the worse. So things like are like there's like this things have kind of like stabilized between the two parties, and then K. Rool loses his shit and decides to steal the bananas, and then things just escalate from there. But Wrinkly's still on Crocodile Isle, and suddenly
because it's an analog to the 1980s, they consider bananas a vegetable in the Kong College cafeteria.
That is a fruit. I mean, it's not like ketchup, I'm sure they have banana ketchup. Actually, I wonder.
I think that exists. Yeah.
Does it exist?
I want to say I've seen it. Yeah. Yeah. Look it up.
Okay, well, I've seen things too while on drugs, but
they're not all products that you can purchase.
So yeah, there's actually a great amount of continuity there, because Cranky does mention he has a wife, and then this game explains what his wife has been up to and why she's not living with Cranky. And I don't know, just the pieces all came together, and obviously at this point, still, like, she's Donkey Kong's mother, or at least the woman who raised him. Technically his grandmother, we know for sure now, but it's nice that like part of the family is filled in. And there's Swanky Kong. Swanky,
well, there's of course Funky is back and funkier than ever.
Yeah, Funky's back. Yeah, and Cranky's
his new
back.
theme tune is fantastic. Both of theirs, Cranky's and Funky's, are like the Monkey Museum.
When I met Robin Beanland, I said, I really liked David Wise's funky theme better than yours.
Did you really say that to him?
That was the first thing I said to him. No, because I'm not a weirdo, Chad. I didn't go up to him and say, let me talk to you about Funky's fugue.
All right. Well, yes.
I'm sorry. I just had to give you a little bit of shit.
You've already given me shit about that moment. Let us dwell more on the time that I put my foot firmly in my mouth in front of one of my heroes. Yeah.
Hey, at least you didn't like completely screw up the name of David Quinn. So.
To be fair, he did not correct you. He's like, he did not. He wants to call me Joe Neat.
And to be fair, he looks a lot like Joe Neat.
I think it was just that we were all meeting the people at Rare, and David Quinn, I think, is officially a Microsoft guy. I think, at least he's based in Seattle, as far as I know.
Well, I don't feel as bad now.
But I think it was just the blur of meeting new people.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, all white males look the same to me.
Yeah, I was going to say that's incredibly racist of you, but
yeah, all Yoshis and white males. Same thing in my book. So yeah, Swanky Kong.
I mean, he's obviously visually the closest to Donkey Kong that you can possibly get, but you don't really feel that because Donkey's not really a main part of this game.
He's Donkey Kong with gold rings and a poofy like fake afro.
Yeah. Basically.
Although his in-game model, it looks like he's wearing a really crappy toupee.
Mm-hmm.
He's got this like black thing on his head.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there is a difference there. Maybe it's just how the sprite wound up. I'm not sure.
I don't know. But yeah. So I love Swanky Kong. Swanky Kong is like, if I could have any Kong back, I want Swanky Kong back because he is just fantastically ludicrous. That they created this character, that this is a character Nintendo owns now thanks to Rare. That he is in the Nintendo Power issue. They had trading cards in the back, and it mentioned that like, Swanky Kong loves disco. Swanky Kong loves Saturday Night Fever. He his favorite book is like 1,000 Ways to Meet Girls or something. Like he's just like this.
1,000 Ways to Meet Girls.
Yeah,
and it's like that Twilight Zone episode that's spelled MEAT.
Yeah, I actually have the card here. Let me pull it up.
Really? Oh, was this the thing I gave you for the
nope.
as a best man's gift in my wedding? No.
No. Those were the old trading cards from the vending machines.
Ah, okay.
Merchandise. These are just like little cards from the back of Nintendo Power. So I've got a digital copy of the card here, and let's see what it says. 100 Ways to Meet Girls. That's his favorite video. That's his favorite video.
His favorite video? Ew.
Yeah, this is 1995. It's okay.
Were there instructional videos sent out to folks that just can't get a break in the dating scene? Oh man.
Apparently. It says turn-ons. Yeah, it lists his turn-ons. Polyester, disco, plaid jackets, his gold 77 Firebird. Essentially, he's the Onion's version of Joe Biden, I guess.
Wow. So we have to... I guess that's the closest thing we have to canonical backstory about Swanky Kong. So we have to assume that he owns a Firebird.
Turn-offs, sushi, heavy metal, and grunge music. So maybe Swanky Kong was the one who murdered Kurt Cobain. There's honestly no way to know. But so this one little card informs so much of my headcanon about Swanky, and I'm DK Vine's headcanon, because like his whole like love of disco and his whole like 70s like fetish, that just came from this effing card.
A lot of that's in the game. I mean, his
think?
music is very.
He's a game show host. He's a cheesy.
Yeah, but it's that game show trope that is rooted in the 70s. You know, the smarmy, the match games, the who is it? Richard Dawson, like those kind of guys. It's there's that archetype of
who is he?
game show
Chuck
host.
Woolery or something.
True. Yeah, Chuck Woolery was pretty straight-laced, though. I'm thinking of the guy who would make out with everyone on The Feud, you know?
Oh, yeah. Before the guy who killed himself, Ray Combs. Ray Combs killed himself.
Oh, God.
He hanged himself.
Mm-hmm. So now that we're all thoroughly depressed, let's continue talking about Swanky Kong.
That was before Al from Home Improvement took over, and then ultimately, what's his name? The guy with...
Mac? No, not him.
No.
That's one of the other kings. No, he's one of the kings of comedy. It's not racist.
One of the kings of comedy. Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey. Thank you.
Yes. I don't see colored My Family Feud host. I just know one of them's dead.
Yeah. I just look at people and I don't see race, but I can tell whether or not they've been featured in a Spike Lee stand-up comedy anthology.
But because of Swanky's resemblance to Donkey Kong, it did lead to some fanon from us that Swanky might be Donkey Kong's brother.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to support this.
Nothing to support it, but also nothing to contradict it. And
actually, in Donkey Kong Country 3, there's a little bit to suggest that there's some relation between him and Cranky.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you buy into the notion that the Donkey Kong 64 announcer, the guy who said "Welcome to bonus game," is actually Swanky Kong?
I've warmed up to the idea.
Yeah. Well done.
But you know what? I can honestly only hear Swanky's voice as Will Arnett at this point because essentially he is Job from Arrested Development without the magic tricks. Although I'm sure he could be a magician in a future game if you wanted him to be.
Okay, Diddy, is your parrot called Squawks, Squeaks, or Flapper?
Yeah,
I like
they're
it.
All three are in the refrigerator. Dead parrot, do not eat.
I don't know what I was expecting.
Yeah, so I love Swanky. Swanky is just ludicrous. Like, why is there's a character called Swanky Kong, and he's a game show host. What the hell? Like, I love Rare. Rare.
Why not?
Balls to the wall, insane. All right.
Yeah.
So there's also Clubba. Let's mention Clubba real quick because Clubba was listed
an important NPC, but yeah.
Yeah. Not a new Kong,
Kong.
but this is the first time we've had a non-Kong as an NPC. And the fact that he was like, this was kind of controversial in my brain space.
He's the proto bear.
Wait, he was the trailblazer. He paved the way for everybody's favorite Nintendo characters, the Brothers Bear.
Of course.
And also future characters like Snide and Chop and Scoff and Professor Chops.
Mm-hmm. And even Bear Bear.
No, because Bear technically is a Banjo character that's unseen.
That's true. Although, it occurred to me the other day that you remember that Night Rare video that in there, Greg Males says, "It's me, Banjo. It's your daddy." So if Night Rare were considered canonical, which of course it's not, Greg Males could possibly be the depicted version of Banjo, of Bear Bear. Banjo's
we're not those hyper literalist Nintendo fans who, because Miyamoto says he's Bowser Jr.'s mother, everybody like they change Mario Wiki to say Bowser had intercourse with Shigeru Miyamoto.
Did they really? Did that happen?
I'm sure it did. I haven't checked these facts, but it feels right in my gut, Chad.
Feels right to slag off the Mario fans for no reason.
They have Milli Vanilli on their goddamn wiki. I mean, god damn it. But yeah, Clubba was also the first Kremling who's not entirely bad.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely an antagonist, but he through dialogue he reveals that K. Rool abuses them. He's there's definitely resentment building up, and you kind of get the sense that Kremlings are capable of independent thought, and they're not all mindless evil foot soldiers. And that's actually important because as the series would go on, we would definitely meet friendly Kremlings. And
and even friendly Kremlings from the same species as previously mindless drones. You're thinking of Crunch, right?
Yeah, although Crunch had more of a face turn because he started off kind of antagonistic and eventually bonded with the others. But
I'd say Clubba would best be categorized as a whistleblower type. You know, he's a turncoat, but he's sort of subverting the status quo on Crocodile Isle to let you undermine K. Rool's authority.
See, I always thought that K. Rool was making him like sell off access to their holy lost world, and I don't know.
I got the impression that he was, because there's a punching bag at Clubba's kiosk that has Diddy's face on it. I always thought that he was basically put there knowing full well that the Kongs would try and get to this lost world, and he was supposed to basically stop them, capture them, deliver them to K. Rool. But he was so fed up that he turned mercenary.
That's one reading of it.
I've got the manual right in front of me. I haven't read this in advance either. The towering Clubba demands payment of anyone who would cross his bridge, and he'll only accept Krem coins. What's on the other side? Why would anyone want to go there? You'll have to find out for yourself. Hint, it's worth it. Okay, well, that tells us nothing.
That tells us absolutely nothing.
But that just describes his function.
Honestly, Clubba is a character I really want back as well. Obviously, I want every character back, fuck it. But because if you really like the pirate Kremlings, he could be the leader of a pirate Kremling faction.
Yeah, I mean, once the island sunk and you see K. Rool sailing away, the logical next question is, what happened to the rest of the Kremlings? You know, the ones we see in the follow-up, or at least in the immediate follow-up, DKC3, bore no resemblance to those Kremlings from the first two games. In fact, they were much more different than even they were between Part 1 and Part 2. Mm-hmm. But we know from DK64...
Kremlings, the new breed, yeah.
Right. We know from DK64, though, that critters are still around. There are Clubbas still around. they weren't entirely wiped off the face of the earth when Crocodile Isle sank. So
No, a good deal of them no doubt perished, but yeah, I mean a lot escaped, and I would love if Clubba came back in Donkey Kong Land too. So I would love if completely different canonical adventure.
yeah.
But I can't wait for the spotlight episode for that one. That's gonna be fun. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, if K. Rool is going to be stuck in his king mode, or if you want to have him become different, personas, you could still have the pirate faction be a thing and just have them be led by Clubba. And I think that's just a perfect callback to DKC2. It's good use of the character. And it also creates this interesting third party of neither friends nor foes,
You know what's funny? The much maligned Donkey Kong Country cartoon series sort of did that with the character Captain Scurvy.
Right, where they just basically took the canon model and they made him a separate character, yeah.
But he was basically there to embody the pirate Kremling aesthetic in that show, which was largely based on the first game of the series.
Right, and then they incorporated elements of DKC2 as it went on. They added Dixie, and So
but I certainly agree. Clubba could have been a very strong, if not mainlining baddie, like a second in command of a separate faction of Kremlings.
Yeah, I'm saying like completely split off from K. Rool at this point, and just have it like you could even like have whole games built around just Clubba. I don't know, like. It's a shame we have such a wealth of characters and so few developers willing to do anything with them. But that's what happens when, the creators of the characters leave and the people who make the games want to create new ones. And I'm not bitter. I love the Snowmads. I love a lot of the things Retro did. It just, these characters, talking about them just rekindles my absolute adoration of them. I mean, it's just, they're fantastic. All right.
Speaking of rekindling your adoration, I mean, I've been thumbing through the manual a bit. Obviously,
let's talk about the manual because December 5th rolls around. I get the game in my hands.
Finally, we're an episode and 3/4 through, and we finally got to the release date of this goddamn game.
Oh, the it's in my hand. The box art is so moody. It's got that. At least here in the U.S., the box art has that green sky. It's like the pea soup green sky, and it's just
really strange artistic choice on. I think it was Steve Males who created this art. I want to say I saw that. Yeah, at least the title screen. I don't know. I assume he also did basically all the various renders that were on this pirate ship model. I think they were him, but I've always wondered about that pea soup sunset because it's strange, but it works.
Well, it also matches the map screen, the overworld map. There's a green sky there too. So I think it just fits in with like you're on the Kremling territory, so the sky is like green as a crocodile. It's just kind of this weird overcast / pollution / I don't know what it is, but it works. It's definitely it definitely stirs up something in the old ball sack.
Well, oh boy, it's evocative also of what would happen on one of the stages. Well, I know Rattle Battle had it kind of through and through, but wasn't there one pirate ship stage where, well, the sun actually sets over the course of the stage? It wasn't Slime Climb. It wasn't a rigging. It was a proper.
Oh, that was
stage.
Gangplank Galley.
Okay, yeah. So over the course of that stage, you see it kind of transform from bright daylight into the box art.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. It was always really
or
cool
at least the ocean becomes green.
Yeah, that's what it was. So it over time it sort of aligns with the color palette that gets seared into your memory from obviously staring at the game while you're on your ride home from Toys R Us.
Well, my mom picked it up for me and picked me up from school, and
is this like what happens when it's 9/11 and the parents panic? It's, oh my god, we've got to pull Hyle out of school. Donkey Kong Country 2 is out.
Oh my god, Donkey Kong's been kidnapped. Everybody, school. No. No, pick me up from
we
school.
We all remember where we were on that day when Donkey Kong was kidnapped.
No, like 3 p.m. picked me up, and the game was waiting for me in the passenger seat of the car, and I just like told it like it was. I don't know. I already said the Ark of the Covenant. Let's say the Holy Grail this time.
Well, first you chastised your mother for not making it wear its seatbelt.
Right. Oh, I buckled that sucker up. But and then Cranky Kong is on the back of the box, and he's like, it's all Cranky Kong quotes. Like he's like, wipe that drool off your face, kid. And I thought that was just a great little bit too. It wasn't just Nintendo trying to say this is a good game, this is better than the last game, buy it. It's Rare being snarky on the back of the box, and fantastic. So much personality just before you even open the box. So when you open the box, you get out the manual, and reading the manual was a tradition for the two of us, like a holy rite. And you have the manual with you. Any cool bits from the manual?
Well, I think it definitely should be stated. By the way, the manual, I had thought that it was Lee Loveday, but doing a bit of research, and again, this is internet data, so who knows, but it seems like Dan Osen from Nintendo actually wrote the manual. Lee is credited with the story, so I think he actually wrote the verbiage of Trouble in Paradise, which is the title of the story to the
right.
game.
We know Greg Mayles and crew came up with the story. Lee Loveday wrote it out as a story in the instruction manual.
That's our best guess. We think that's what happened.
Well, he's credit L. Loveday. This is the first credit for L. Loveday I remember seeing.
Yeah, same here. So yeah, at any rate, I think most of this is owing to Dan Osen. But what immediately leaps to attention is that scattered throughout the manual, Cranky Kong is popping up in these little orange starbursts, basically taking the piss out of everything you're reading.
Like he does in Donkey Kong Country's instruction manual.
Yeah. Only now it's furry shenanigans Cranky with his individual strands of beard hair. But it's great stuff. Like I'm on the more.
It's weird. Cranky's beard has never looked better than it has in this era. This 4 years or so, between Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong 64, the modern Cranky has that weird ice cream cone beard, and I don't know.
I think that Tropical Freeze Cranky has sort of found the happy medium between Return's ice cream beard and this era's like way overzealous furry shenanigans.
I guess I don't know. Part of me still thinks Rare's Cranky right here. Nobody does it better than Rare.
Yeah,
I am the Carly Simon to Rare's Roger Moore here. Nobody does it better. That's a Spy Who Loved Me reference.
I knew it was something Bond. There is I'm on a page called More Swag, which is just all the items in the game. Cranky is down in the corner saying, "I've never seen so much worthless rubbish. I'm surprised they don't give you a special trash barrel to haul it all around in." Okay,
this has to be Lee Loveday, because I'm sure Dan Osen is a funny guy, but this self-deprecating slagging
That's the
off.
thing, though. I mean, Lee is a brilliant comedian, but we've, I think, erroneously credited more stuff to Lee than he actually did. We know we've done that in the past. Greg wrote a lot of the dialogue in BK, for instance, but for a long time we gave that over to Lee in our heads. I mean, I would say give people credit for being funny with things and words that I'm not able to form at the moment clearly.
Unlike you or me, people are funny. No, I mean, the whole self-deprecating thing seems to come that's bred into Rare's DNA, and it just doesn't seem like a very Nintendo thing. And of course, this was '90s Nintendo of America, so who knows? Maybe they were hip to the jive. And,
it could have been. I mean, there's literally no way to know. I tried. I asked Dan Osen on Twitter if he remembered anything about the game's production, and he said, "Nope, but thanks." Very nice about it. But I would say there's, given the fact that there are sources saying Dan Osen did the manual, whereas Lee did the story, I would say let's credit these Cranky quotes to Dan Osen until we know better.
Maybe Dan Osen just did like the warnings and the safety information. Thank you for purchasing Donkey Kong Country 2 and that stuff.
Well, here's what Cranky has to say about that. "I'll wager this shoddy game won't even last 3 days, so you'll be needing this warranty, I can assure you."
Okay. like you would never see that in this day and age. Like a guarantee from a character that this game will break in 3 days.
Yeah, and you'll need your manufacturer's warranty.
You would never see that. Like that is just like, oh my god. Like Nintendo's sense of humor nowadays. This is something behind the scenes we bitched about. Like they're promoting their Black Friday deals, their Cyber Monday deals or whatever, and on their Facebook page was like Mario reading a flyer, and it's like, oh, in between seeing the news that a Goomba was stuck in a tree, Mario saw some great deals from Nintendo or something like that.
Right.
And it was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was like Toad rescues a Goomba stuck in tree.
Toad rescues a Goomba from a tree, yeah. And that's Nintendo sense of humor. That's my thing. This isn't at least modern Nintendo sense of humor. So that's why it's so easy to just assume it was from Rare. So if it is Dan Osen, then more power to him. I'm glad he was representing in the 90s.
I tried to ask Dan, but he was not forthcoming.
That's all right. You would think if he wrote Cranky Kong Starburst in the DKC2 instruction manual, that would be his life's greatest achievement, and he would brag about it to people in bars and whatnot. But
that would be the first entry on my LinkedIn page.
Oh yeah, I would introduce people. Hi, I'm the guy who wrote Cranky Kong's dialogue in the DKC2 instruction manual. Yeah, that was me. Yeah. Any other cool bits from?
I mean, it's sort of the standard issue. I mean, it's all clever. I'd say
standard issue. It's the greatest instruction manual of all time, Chad.
I mean, it's the sort of stuff that you would normally expect with from an instruction booklet. Details the worlds, details the characters. It's full of just gorgeous renders that are tragically cropped in some places or obstructed by text. So it's
and this is the tragedy of Donkey Kong Country 2. I think out of all the DKC games, it has the most renders out there, like scenes and whatnot, but in like the lowest quality available because they're just scanned from magazines and players' guides and instruction manuals. We've never gotten really high quality versions of any of these, except very few.
A few trickled out during the Game Boy Advance promotion as like desktop wallpaper, but I think what we're using as key art on this episode is one of those higher resolution GBA era renders that I think ultimately became the Japanese box art for the SNES game because their Super Nintendo boxes were vertically oriented. But I mean, there's renders, the cranky things. One little tidbit that I was liked when they're describing some of the drone baddies, and we've talked about this previously, that Cutlass was given a personality, despite the fact that it's just an innumerable drone. They say that Cutlass, who has comically oversized swords, mail ordered them from a TV offer, but they turned out to be a little bigger than they looked on his small screen. And then after that sentence, it says, "Excellent."
Excellent. Yeah. That sticks with you. That sticks with you your whole life. Like that.
Yes.
That makes that character, even though he's a drone, it's
Right.
You're just like you're in love with that character from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
That is why story matters. That is why character details matters. It can make you a lifelong fan of concepts like this.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, you have to actually get the person to read the instruction manual, but.
So those are really some of the only things that stand out without just kind of digging in and reading it.
All right, well, we've got the cartridge in hand now. Our hands are shaking. Palms are sweaty, but we're putting it in our SNES, our SNES.
Yeah. Yes.
And we're changing our channel to the right channel 3 or 4, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We're turning on the power. And then there it is.
And we're pausing until our next week's episode.
Oh, come on.
Do you really want to? Okay. I guess we can sort of split it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the first world at least. I mean, come on.
Okay.
Come on. Please,
I don't know.
please,
You were
please.
a little unnecessarily long-winded at the top of the show when going through those animal buddies for 45 minutes. But if you really want to press on,
never say again that I was long-winded when talking about animal buddies. God damn it.
All right.
Nothing else is as important.
All right. So,
We're not on anybody's schedule here. Come on, I could do this all night long, baby. And I know everybody listening could do this all night long.
take it away.
All right, take it away. It's a Paul McCartney song from Tug of War. Anyway, Ringo played drums on that one. So
You're pushing and pulling with my patience right now.
I could go to Pipes of Peace and make some say jokes. So we turn on the power, and there it is. The there's new Rareware and Nintendo fanfare. You know, the original DKC had the dun 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 dun, and this one had something far funkier.
Was that a 20th Century Fox fanfare? What was that?
I don't know what that was, but
All right.
this one was dun 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 dun. Help me out here, Chad. Dun dun dun. And it was surreal to see that it was like the familiar imagery of the Rare logo, the Nintendo logo, Nintendo Presents, but with this all new, like, far jazzier music. And so already, like, your perceptions are skewed. Like, this is going to be the same, but it's going to be quite different. And then
but then immediately it goes to the title screen, which is Diddy and Dixie sort of opening this treasure chest with all of these trinkets that will be collected throughout the adventure.
This title screen was hard to make out because I don't know, they just couldn't, like, put this rendered image in the game without, like, severely scaling it down, and so a lot of details get lost.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember seeing it it seemed clear on my TV screen.
Yeah, it just, like, so some of the background details are just, like, unintelligible.
Yeah, like, you can't quite tell that that's Screech hitting Squawks with a baseball bat. But you can barely tell that from the box art. No, we actually found out not too long ago that the treasure chest on that title screen was originally rendered completely to open up and reveal everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was something that they had to cut at the very last minute due to cartridge space constraints.
Yep, this game is just too good for the SNES, god damn it. Well, yeah, so then you start up, you have the same options generally as you had before.
Well, hang on, let's not undersell the importance of the music. That boom, 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 boom. It's basically the court theme that listeners of the Vine Donkey Kong audio program may be familiar with, but it's sort of a version of Clubba's Kiosk theme, and it sort of sells this whole foreboding sensibility that you encounter in the game. It's no longer... It's an adventure, but you're obviously on enemy territory. It's obviously a bit darker, more mysterious. It feels like there's untapped potential in this world, whereas in Donkey Kong Country, on DK Island, that's familiar ground. Not for the player, but certainly for the characters.
There are definitely intimidating areas of Donkey Kong Country. I'm thinking like the Misty Mines and the, Rock Rocks and whatnot. But yeah, generally it was safe territory. And here too, you're without your big buddy, you're without your mentor, your protector. You're off on your own. And that definitely adds to the sense of in over your head. And
but I think what's important though is on this image and pretty much all the other ones you'd see except for the game over screen, Diddy and Dixie are smiling, they're having fun, they're eating it up, this whole adventure, despite the fact that it is such a difficulty increase for the player from the first game, but it's also this this sort of malicious environment that you're in. But the fact that the characters are having fun tells you that it's okay to have fun yourself, to not get like scared if you're a little kid or really caught up to be brought down by that idea.
I like that the game tells you, don't be miserable while playing this.
Yeah. It'd be nice if more games these days told you that. It's okay to have fun with the general concept of leisure activities.
Or maybe Mario Tennis Ultra Smash just apologizes to you as you turn it on.
Right.
We did the best we could. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that's actually an important aspect of Dixie's character. Like, Diddy is, adventurous and brave, and eventually becomes a cocky little shit by the time of Donkey Kong 64. But Dixie seems to like get off, not in the sexual sense, but just like when with danger and adventure afoot, she's like ecstatic about it. She's got almost like a death wish. Not like she's suicidal, but she just like. She's
not a nymphomaniac. She's not suicidal. What I'm really trying to say about Dixie
is that she no. But I think Tropical Freeze that really nailed her character in the not nailed as in the sense you would of having like one night stand, but I mean it really perfected her character or like tapped into what she's supposed to be when. Like the snowmads are approaching the island and she's just kind of like giddy. She's smiling. She's like, the others look worried or concerned and she's like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. Like,
yeah, that intro for Tropical Freeze really nailed like all four of those characters in that moment where they see the snowmads for the first time. It's written all over their faces, but it's perfectly keyed into what Rare was doing, especially with this game, to establish their personalities.
I mean,
so
Dixie...
It very well done on Retro's part.
Yeah. I mean, Dixie, like in this game, I think it's telling. She's always like, when she's on the honey, she's licking it. She's tasting it. She's always getting like a little extra enjoyment out of everything than Diddy. I mean, Diddy enjoys himself too, but you know what I mean. It's just there's definitely this aspect of her where she's a little bit more of an adventure hound than even Diddy and Donkey. So yeah, I like that about Dixie.
So starting up the game, you go to the file select screen.
Yes. Now the file select screen, it gives you 3 files to choose from. Are you really going to talk about the file select screen? Are we really going to be that thorough?
Well, you spent an hour and a half talking about Animal Buddies.
Oh my God! You're going to hold this over my head for the entire Spotlight trilogy.
No, I would say that certainly something noteworthy here was the cheats menu, which had those extra renders. I forget how to access it. Was it LRR, LRR, LR, or was it barrel axe or ya sad lad? Do you remember these? I select A down, left A down.
I only did this once or twice, so it's not burned into my brain, unfortunately.
Okay, well I think the LRR, LRR, that's DKC3. I want to say that this one was. I think barrel axe, BA right, A left, AX was DKC1. This one might have been ya sad lad, YA select A down, left A down. But at any rate,
barrel axe is actually how Diddy attracted Dixie. He sprayed some of that on.
Fantastic. So, I don't remember which of the, I don't remember how exactly you access this cheat menu, but, oh wait! Yes, I do. You go to the music select and then keep pressing down 5 times. And then you get to a new render of Diddy and Dixie. And then you keep doing it more and you get to the special cheats render. And that's where you can enter cheats. I just don't remember what they were.
Okay.
Yeah. So, at any rate, people are probably screaming into their iPhones telling me what the correct codes are. But that's one really cool, noteworthy thing about the file select menu, that it even hid the place where you input the codes, but by finding it, you were rewarded with extra character renders.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to talk about in the menus?
I liked how they had the map screen in the background.
Oh yeah, the treasure map where the treasure is K. Rool's keep, so therefore it's Donkey Kong himself.
Yeah, not map screen. It was a screen of a treasure map. Yeah, and that's your ultimate destination. So the whole time, you may have noticed when you get to the overworld in the exact next screen after this that it bears some resemblance to what that map was. And you're like, okay, I know where I'm going with this.
But the overworld. Okay, so we start the game. The overworld is dramatically different than Donkey Kong Country in that Donkey Kong Country was a single screen and you just went around it. This
and
one
it's static as well. There's no animation in the DKC.
Right. It's just a pre-rendered image. This one is far less static, and it's also you're basically scrolling up. It's huge. In comparison, I mean, Donkey Kong Country 3's was huge. This one is, in comparison to the first one, huge. But the music, I mean, you had that jaunty music from the original game. Then
Simian Segway.
Yeah. This one is
an Evelyn Fisher classic, by the way.
Yes. This one, on the other hand, foreboding, and I mean, it just bump, 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 bump. You immediately know you're in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, and that melody even. I've been told that minor keys mean something is ominous, so I'm gonna assume this is a minor key. I have no musical knowledge whatsoever, but it's that dun 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 dun.
By the way, we really should just release an album. Hyle and Chad sing the a cappella hits of David Wise.
It would sell 2s and 3s of copies.
It would sell negative copies.
We would have to pay people to take it off our hands. Yeah.
I mean, this one, I remember playing this in my living room, and I limited myself to one stage that first night, because I wanted to, like, Elliot and I were going to play it the next day. And so I was only going to give myself a little bit of a taste and then just play the instruction manual. And luckily, it snowed that night, and we had a 2-hour delay the next morning. So we were able to get to Crocodile Cauldron before school that day.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we skip ahead to Crocodile Cauldron, let's talk about the Gangplank Galleon itself. So
Gangplank Galleon, yeah.
In the background of this world's map screen, you see DK Island, and you also see that on the main Crocodile Isle screen.
That's such a great... Well, you don't see it on the Crocodile Isle screen. You see it in K. Rool's Keep.
Sorry. Yes, you're right, because that's where Clubba is. Yeah.
But yeah, what a great touch this was. This immediately made everything feel familiar. Made it feel like an extension of the first game. And this was the third time we've been on the Gangplank Galleon at this point in a year, essentially, because it was also part of the first world of Donkey Kong Land. Gangplank Galleon Ahoy, not Congo Jungle, and Gangplank Galleon Ahoy, apparently.
Which gives you the exclamation mark, despite the fact that you have not necessarily found all the bonus levels in there.
So confusing, yeah. I mean, this is familiar, but also it's giving you what you really wanted. And we know from Greg Mails that they had originally planned on having Donkey Kong Country 2 take place seconds after Donkey Kong Country, because it was going to take place on the Gangplank Galleon. K. Rool would have gotten up and kidnapped Donkey Kong. Doesn't really work with the ending of Donkey Kong Country, because they do leave the Gangplank Galleon and go
then
back
there's
to
Donkey Kong Land.
And I think once they realized Donkey Kong Land was going to be a thing, then they decided, okay, it can't take place immediately after. So
would have been so cool, though. Honestly,
I'm glad we actually had a year of real time in the story. It's fine. Because otherwise, the characters don't have a chance to breathe.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I like the idea that a video game of this type would be planned to that degree. There's something about that that's really enticing, but I see the arguments against as well.
Yeah, it would be like, do you remember the Mortal Kombat live action movie?
Yes. Yeah. Doesn't at the end Shang Tsung come down or something?
Shao Kahn.
Shao Kahn, yeah. Yeah,
but then the horrible sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, takes place seconds after the movie, and it just makes it doesn't work, because they kill off Johnny Cage within seconds, the most beloved character of the first movie, and then the characters are just immediately plunged into this all new adventure, and you're like, oh, they haven't even had time to go to the bathroom. This doesn't work. So it'd be like
how
that.
You choose to nitpick Mortal Kombat 2.
That's the first problem with it. There's a myriad of other issues, but yeah. Yeah, so it's just really cool to be back on the Gangplank Galleon, fully fleshed out. And when I think of the Gangplank Galleon, this is what I think about this world. So, Pirate Panic, the first stage.
Yeah, I mean, immediately you're introduced to slightly altered gameplay in addition to much larger sprites. The characters, well, not much larger. They're not like twice as big as they were on DKC.
I was gonna say, what are you talking about?
But they are a bit bigger. Diddy's a little bigger. Like everything is zoomed in slightly from how the sprites appeared on the screen in the first DKC, and in my mind that really made the visuals, especially the improved ACM graphics with furry shenanigans, etc. Basically they've gotten a better handle on their modeling software, and this gave you a slightly better look at it. So immediately, of course, you're drinking in this pirate ship.
It is interesting.
It
is worth pointing out, at least, that on the promotional renders, Diddy has now stars on his shirt, a Nintendo on his hat sometimes. Dixie has a rare pin on her beret sometimes. But in the actual game, their clothes are bare. It's just a red shirt, red hat, pink beret. They don't have those little details. And actually, Diddy wouldn't gain those in game until Diddy Kong Racing.
Yeah.
And Dixie would actually never have the rare pin in any in-game depiction.
Is that true?
Yeah, think about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, it was the water. Both the water and the sky in this one were just bright blue. Just this extremely kind of welcoming high seas aesthetic. After going
high
through
seas
this
adventure, that's what this is. This is immediately sets the stage for what the game is. This is the only stage that takes place entirely out at sea, but that spirit just is pervasive throughout the entire game. That sense of it's a swashbuckling kind of quest.
Yeah, we're gonna really need to dig into a thesaurus, because high seas, swashbuckling, we're running out of ways to describe this, and Sea of Thieves is right around the corner.
Nah, just give it enough time. We'll talk about Goldilocks for 30 weeks, and then when Sea of Thieves comes out, everybody will have forgotten. And we won't have any listeners left either, so we'll have a whole new crowd coming in.
I feel like I've just been overusing the word aesthetic, much less anything else. So there's also a thing in the first stage that's similar to both DK's treehouse and going to see the Banana Horde, which is K. Rool's the captain's cabin on the Gangplank Galleon.
Yeah, and I like that there's a portrait of King K. Rool in the background there. It's just a nice nod to the immediate past, to show, we haven't forgotten. He's a king, but,
Yeah. The background art inside the cabin would constitute one of the two hardest questions from Swanky's sideshow, not his sideshow.
Oh, that effing question. That was just a BS,
Yeah. It was, which of these four items are not in the background, or which of these three items? There was also one about the number of windows in his cabin, and there was even a Kong College question about how many airplanes.
Oh, airplanes, yeah.
Yeah, there may have been a globe one as well. But yeah, these really, really specific, intricate details about the background art that's pretty pixelated. Those were the only cheap shots that I can think of from Swanky's. But
I imagine whoever wrote those questions, they were just rubbing their nipples while they were doing it, laughing.
But you get a 1-up balloon inside of here, but you also get to see the ransom note that Captain K. Rool has very helpfully left for you.
Very helpfully levitated in the air for you.
Yeah. It's
through Kremling
I've
magic.
kidnapped that lumbering fool Donkey Kong, and you'll never see him again. Har 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 har.
Captain K. Rool.
Okay, that's he's an old wino pervert out at sea, apparently. This cabin is...
I mean, what do you want me to go with the DK64 voice?
I kidnapped that lumbering fool, and you will never see him again.
But I mean, it's about har 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 har. It's one letter away from a Jack Chick villain.
Ha ha ha.
Ha 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 ha. Yeah.
This cabin is also worth noting. There's a code you can enact here. If you hop over the right amount of bananas going into it or something,
It was. I think what you have to do is go past the cabin, jump over the bananas, jump over the neeks, get the banana bunch on the first set of above-ground barrels, go back to the cabin, avoiding those bananas on the ground, avoiding those neeks, and then a Krem coin will appear. And if you get that Krem coin, you get all 75 Krem coins from the game. I think that's how it works.
Right. I did this once on a save file I didn't keep, but it was interesting to find out that existed. That they bothered to put that in the game. It's like, we got to have a cheat somewhere.
Well, I think it might have been for debug purposes as well.
Well, yeah, that's
I don't know if
that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? But
Well, somebody at Rare probably knows.
Probably, unless
why don't you tweet them? No, they would respond, "I don't remember."
That's what I've been finding a lot, is that just the memories on this game in general are pretty hazy, and we talked about it last week that maybe it's owing to the fact that this was an extremely focused, rapid-fire development process that probably only had like about 11 months to really do. So, considering how much they accomplished on the technology of the day, which would have been time-consuming and probably relatively clunky compared to the tools as we know them now.
Right.
Especially
considering how Rare infamously just kit bash things and didn't took these weird routes to getting a game done and getting more out of the hardware than you're technically allowed to.
Yeah. They broke a lot of rules in those days, and they invented rules that they then broke. But all to the benefit of the games they were making.
I like to imagine they made this game on pure cocaine and purple drank.
That might explain the sky color.
Okay, but the thing I like about Pirate Panic, and by the way, we've got to talk about some David Wise music, which I think is going to be playing underneath us.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is. I like how this music takes a while to get going, and it really lets the atmosphere soak in first. The creaking of the ship, the waves, it really sells the atmospheric elements before you get the theme in. And this is actually the one stage that really does play with that more than any other. It kind of taps into that Donkey Kong Country way of doing things, of letting the sound effects inform the music versus the other way around.
Yeah, because even the jungle theme from DKC, it really starts off slowly with just those tribal drums, and you can hear it coming.
You can hear it coming, yeah, and I think that's one reason people don't like the first tune in Donkey Kong Country 3, because it just starts off it doesn't have the slow build, the slow crescendo as the first two games. But yeah,
although you do get a bit of that kind of atmospheric slow build with the Kremlantis theme itself.
Northern Cremisphere, not Kremlantis.
Yeah. Sorry. The Cremisphere theme. Yes.
You're thinking Donkey Kong Racing still. You got it on the brain.
I know.
It's interesting that the bonus stages are very much improved in this game. They're much more focused. You have direct objectives, and unlike the retro games, it's not just collect the bananas. There's destroy them all. There's find the token. There are collect the bananas or collect the stars. But they're all with the purpose of getting Krem coins.
Yeah, and that was another really fantastic thing about this game. And honestly, I don't know that we can do it justice if we try and talk at length about each of these. Maybe we should just talk about some of the new elements in general, and then save the level by level talk for next episode. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, sure. One
of the things that sort of was lackluster in a way about the bonus stages in the first DKC was that basically you got credit for it regardless of what happened in the room.
You could just show up and immediately fail, and then that would be it. I mean, it's great for speed running, but it's not very rewarding for actually playing the game.
Right, and of course the novelty of just having extra bonus stages scattered everywhere was pretty innovative in the first DKC, but what's so great is that in this one, almost everything that you could potentially look back on that first game and see not age well, they identified and fixed in this game.
Yes, and like the lack of animal tokens.
Right. Another really excellent, that's one that I've been the animal tokens I've been running into incessantly on my DKC twitching, and it's like I'm going out of my way to avoid them now.
Right. I also, it's great that Krem coins exist, and there actually is an end game for getting all the bonus stages, because let's be honest, Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Land, you didn't have to get 101% or 100% because you ultimately got nothing for it. Cranky Kong congratulated you, and that's it.
Like one line of it's like the in cinema for Donkey Kong Land.
Yeah,
one line.
You didn't get anything in Donkey Kong Land except 100% on the file screen. So it was basically worthless to do so. So this actually gave you amazing incentive, extra levels, and a secret ending. And that's something the instruction manual even promises. There's a secret end, like the true ending of the game, I believe is the way they phrased it. So yeah.
One of the interesting things, by giving you that incentive, it's one half of incentivizing this exploration, but I think the other half is likely the team-up move itself, which opens up so much more of the level than you ever had access to in the first game. And you don't fully learn how to use that move yet until a bit later when, after you do get Dixie, they tell you, hey, hit the A button, team up, and then play around with this thing.
It is amazing what they can do with just bananas in this game, because there's no bottles to teach you stuff. There's no Professor Chops to pop out, behind things and say, press this. They just give you bananas or like arrows and just let you figure it out. Or, they tell you how to do it with bananas. But, ultimately it's just they can do so much with relatively so little.
Yeah, and but by letting you pick up your partner and throw them around, sometimes even off where the screen would scroll, they reveal to you that there is so much out there for you to collect. But we were talking last week about how Yoshi's Island and DKC attempt to do completely different things, and they're both quite successful at them. But I think what Yoshi's Island
it's the
really
West Side Story of Nintendo, though. They're two opposite gangs from 1995. Just very nice. Very nice.
Yes, but what Yoshi's really sets out to do is to make you look in every nook and cranny to find all of those red coins and the flowers and so on. But DKC 2 does the same thing, but is also able to retain the incredibly fun, rapid-paced gameplay that you don't. It's like you sort of have that focus on rapid gameplay in DKC 2 with a secondary concern of collecting all the crazy shit, whereas in Yoshi, those primary and secondary objectives are flipped. But I think that one of the brilliant things about the way that DKC 2 approaches it is that you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. You can actually 100% and blaze through in a very fluid motion, and you don't feel like that's ever disrupted.
Yeah,
whereas for Yoshi's Island, you have to really be a speed runner to accomplish both of those at the same time.
Yeah. Now, some people disagree with you that... I know there's some people in the DK Vine forum, like M-Dog, Michael Julius Peterson, who feels that the original Donkey Kong Country is superior to Donkey Kong Country 2. I know, heretical, right? But he just because the original game, he feels, has a much more fast-paced, hop-and-bop, fluid gameplay, while Country 2 is more deliberate and a little bit more slower paced, and there is a little bit more exploration involved. And I mean, I think it's all subjective. I see his point. I think this game is stronger for those moments that make you really stop and take it in. Well,
I think that it can be played a variety of ways, but I don't think that that those two play styles are pulling in opposite directions. I think they actually coalesce quite neatly into like there are paths to roll, and like if you watch a DKC2 speedrun, like yes, of course the first two worlds are nothing but warp barrels, but once you actually get into the meat of the game, it's very fluid, very well designed. It's up there with the Retro Studios DKC stages in terms of speedrun friendliness, which you wouldn't think considering how much there is to collect. But I don't know. I think that I wouldn't necessarily agree with that statement, but I certainly respect his right to make it.
Right. Yeah, the team up mode, I mean, that's just, I think, genius. And like you said, it really does open up exploration. Anything else like we want to discuss from at least the first stage that if you know?
Well, not just the first stage. I'm kind of thinking some of the overall new elements. There are. Okay. I think it's really cool that both Diddy and Dixie get end of level little musical arrangements. You know, you're no longer just entering a cavern somewhere. You actually.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about. It is fascinating to me, and I find this stuff fascinating. That all three Donkey Kong Country games have different end-of-level targets or exits or goals or whatever. Obviously Country 1 had the caves. Country 2 has end-of-level targets. Yeah. And there's a prize attached to a pole, a metal pole, and if you hit the target from a certain height, then you get that prize. And it's great that not only does it adds an extra element of how can I hit this target from this height. It's you don't just finish a level anymore. You have to finish a level smartly.
Yeah, it's a little mini puzzle at the very end, just so you're not letting down your guard.
My God, I mean, that's just amazing to me that they would go to that extra length. Well, we can improve this and add all this. Like they could have just had the damn caves. You know?
Yeah, even DKC3 didn't really have that. It was just the flag, but there was nothing special about the way that you approach it.
It was just a flagpole, right? And the flagpole told you right away if you got all the secrets or the hero coin, but there's no strategy involved to the flag. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why Country 2 is probably the most superior entry in the trilogy is just bits like this that just make it that much more.
But those little ending bits as well.
I thrust it right now. Like,
oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Painting a picture for our listeners.
But the animation,
yes. Yeah, those are just they're so 90s. They're so incredibly 90s, and
very
I
very
sort
90s.
Of wish that in DK64 Diddy would have had a boombox, and maybe Tiny could have been given the guitar that was previously owned by Dixie. But
I'm sure Dixie taught Diddy how to play the guitar, though.
Very likely. I still just absolutely loved how it imbued the characters with personality that wasn't missing. It was just extra for us.
I wonder, every time somebody complains, oh, Diddy Kong is too 90s. I'm like, what do you mean he's too 90s? Like, and I think maybe people are just remembering the boombox.
Yeah. It's like, if anything, that's 80s, right? Wasn't Do the Right Thing like late 80s? I mean, if he's doing a Radio Raheem.
Yeah, like Ghetto Blasters are from the mid to late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking it up right now. Yes, Do the Right Thing, 1989. Excellent.
Yeah.
My second Spike Lee reference of the episode. I'm proud of myself.
He is going to tweet your home address thanking you.
Also, speaking of how each of them got a little specific musical bit, Dave Wise, who completely composed the soundtrack to this game, whereas he collaborated on the previous one.
The only Donkey Kong Country game that he solely composed.
Not even Tropical Freeze.
Not technically not. No, there's a couple songs Kenji did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the Rocket Barrel would have been repurposed from the previous
Rocket
game.
Barrel.
Yeah.
But
in each stage though, there was also a special victory song if you got the low hanging end of target, if you didn't actually get the special character animation, but there was also a special death tune that would play depending on the archetype that you're in. So
That's
if you listen
crazy. That is crazy that they went that extra mile.
They even had this stuff on the cassette tape that I got from Nintendo Power for the soundtrack.
Those were the bonus tracks.
Yeah, there were. It was on the CD. I think did they split them out into separate tracks, or was it just one giant playlist?
I don't know, because you have the CD. I only have the cassette. And
I eventually got the CD, but initially I owned the cassette.
Yeah, man, I wore that cassette out, man.
Yeah.
God, I before I had the cassette, before Nintendo Power offered the cassette, I had I took my Talkboy and I held it up to the TV and I recorded music from this game to listen to later. That's how good the music was, and that's how much of a freak I was.
It's the only way that you could possibly scare off Tim Curry.
Yeah, and then I would slow it down and speed it up. Then it would become David Wise's music, The Father,
the speed run. Yeah, but what else in general can we talk about? Obviously, we'll get into the intricacies of the of some of the animal controls or things that are
animal
very
barrels
level specific.
and I mean, really, like. There's Dixie's helicopter spin. I think we would be remiss if we didn't discuss that.
Well,
I mean,
let's not be remiss.
Let us not.
So,
oh,
be my guest.
she floated through the air and stuff. It was cool.
Oh yeah, she had a helicoptery hair thing. Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't even commit to the conquer there.
Man, you are tired. You are worn down.
Yeah, I'm a little worn down. Circling the drain.
You are entering that ship graveyard. K. Rool is piloting you into the rocks. No, Dixie's got the hair thing, and it's a good thing. I like it.
It's another one of those things similar to the team up move that really opens up stages.
I mean, some people have even complained that it breaks the gameplay. Like, who wants to play as Diddy when you can just float as Dixie? But Diddy has his advantages. He is quicker. He climbs faster than Dixie.
Does he? Okay.
I think he's a faster swimmer. Yeah. Like, they didn't nerf Diddy in favor of Dixie. Like, Dixie is probably easier for novices to control, but Diddy, in the hands of a skilled player, is, I think, slightly more capable than Dixie.
To memory, there's only one place in the game that you absolutely need Dixie, and I think it's that one Gloomy Gulch stage with the wind flying back and forth, and there's a bit where you have to jump off a hook as Dixie and helicopter while the wind pushes you to the right to get a DK coin, a hero coin.
Thank you. I was gonna like quit this show right then and there, but you corrected yourself.
I corrected myself. I saw the error of my ways.
We don't have to bring in Joe next week to replace me.
Right. But I think that may be the only area in the game, the only moment that requires Dixie. I could be wildly off on that, but more or less you can get through the whole thing as Diddy.
Right. I mean, so that's good. I mean, there are places. There are the Diddy and Dixie barrels, the barrel cannons. That,
yeah. Well, duh. Yeah, of course. Okay, never mind.
But yeah, I mean, I love Dixie, but it's not like Diddy was like the worthless character, and that's a complaint like you get in Tropical Freeze. Well, why would you play as Diddy or Cranky when you've got Dixie? Maybe it's more applicable there. We'll discuss that when we get to a Tropical Freeze spotlight. But definitely in Donkey Kong Country 2, both are extremely capable, and honestly, I think it's the best balance between characters because they're more equal than any other game. Like, you know what I mean?
You don't feel like you're crippled at any point when you're playing with either of them. Despite the fact that they each have their own subtle advantages, they are subtle. You know, Kiddy Kong, he's a lumbering brute, kind of the same with Donkey. Then they both have bigger hitboxes, so naturally you'd go with the smaller, more nimble of the two.
But there's areas in the original Donkey Kong Country though where when you're playing as Diddy and you're surrounded by really tough enemies, you know, especially when you have the tight platforming of some of the later stages.
True.
Like, and, you know,
Trick Track Trek, I think was
or Platform Peril or something where Crusha is on the platform with you and it's very tight.
Right. Diddy can roll through some of those guys. Some of them. He can roll through clumps, but not crushes. They didn't really use that too much in part 3, did they? I mean, there were the crumples that Kitty could dispatch, Dixie could not, but they were never really in your way to such a degree.
Right. But it's what I like about this game is that it's far more daunting to have two small monkeys who can't take out the larger enemies on their own, you know?
Right. Well, and that's part of what's
well,
so
they can
cool
team
about
up.
the team up
They
move.
can team up. Right.
So that was something I didn't really even know could be done. Is you encounter the crunches, which are the crushes of this game, and you can actually team up and throw the other character at them and do more damage than each character would be able to do individually. And that's sort of just an extra feature. It's not really something they advertise at you.
Right. By the way, though, can we just point out real quick the dick move you can do is in a 2-player team where you can throw the other person and just leave them
and run away.
Yeah. Like you can throw like Diddy or Dixie and then like just throw them onto the ground and they'll like Dixie will start crying, Diddy will be rubbing his head, and you can jump over them and leave them. If you don't touch them, they will not follow you and you can die. Like at that point, you don't have a partner.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be nice if you had to go back and find them where you left them?
Yeah, I love that, you could also be a little bit of a dick with that, but it still wasn't like the nice thing about Donkey Kong Country games, unless you're playing 2-player contest, it's not as antagonistic as it is in other 2-player games where you're in competition with the other player.
That's a thing that's always been, I guess it's always been a difference between the Mario series and the DKC series, and it's something that has come in for me into harsh relief in the current generation with
we've talked about this. Yeah,
I know, but yeah, the whole competition versus cooperation, and in my mind these games are, and the Mario games too, if you're going to play as simultaneous single player, why are you trying to impede progress when there's a clear end goal you're both trying to get to?
No, but that's what I love about the Donkey Kong Country games, because it's just built into the story itself about teamwork and tutelage and a sense of family and community. There's not this rivalry between the Kongs. I guess Donkey Kong Land 3 is the only time they played into that, but it wasn't really part of the gameplay. But
yeah, I mean, God, the real-time co-op in Donkey Kong Land 3 might not have even existed for how much I care about it.
But no, it's I like that. Mario and Luigi always seem to have Luigi always seems to have a chip on his shoulder, and that's kind of built into the gameplay where you can compete with each other as you play, or just totally fuck up the other person. You don't really get that with Donkey Kong Country, except for this one team up move that you can turn into a wrong thing, but you wouldn't do it if you actually want to progress. So
yeah, exactly. It's optional dickishness, which is really what you don't want to you don't want to accidentally bump into the other player. But given the fact that there wasn't simultaneous co-op, it wasn't a major issue in this game. But
no, but it's
the spirit that was established.
Still, it's not like the Super Mario Brothers games where you're taking turns and you're seeing who can beat the game first.
Right.
There is
that mode.
Sense. Yes, there is that mode, but 2-player team, then there's that definite sense of partnership, and that's right. I love that about these games.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
so do you have any final overall thoughts? I think really we should start next week's episode digging dedicatedly into either level by level or archetype by archetype, but focus on the damned game itself.
Hey, we talked about Animal Buddies for a good solid 4 hours tonight, and if that's not talking about the game, I don't know what is, Chad. I don't even know you anymore, man. Who are you?
Well, I can't speak to that, but let's see if our listeners have any final thoughts before we sign off for the week.
That's right. So yeah, if you actually haven't done so and you want to have some of your thoughts, your memories about the game aired at the end of next week's episode, call the DK Vine hotline at 1-281-410-KONG. That's 5664. And yeah, if you're not like a complete weirdo about it, we'll play your call, and it'll be a nice moment for everybody.
I think that might be a helpful disclaimer for some of our previous callers.
Yeah, we're not going to be engaging with the call, so don't ask us questions. We're not going to answer your questions. Just like, hey, I like Donkey Kong Country 2. This is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about
opportunity for you to wax nostalgic, maybe get a little sentimental, but yeah, just tell us about some fond memories, little anecdotes. You have 3 minutes until the call hangs up on you. So
if you really like Click Clack and you have a poem you want to read about Click Clack, read that poem about Click Clack.
I would welcome all the Click Clack poetry out there. Let's hear it next week.
That's your homework assignment. Yes.
Hey guys, Trainer Derek from the forum. Gotta say, I'm loving hearing from people who are old enough to remember the release of this game. I was a bit younger, but funny enough, my furthest back childhood memory is Donkey Kong Country 2. Around 3 years old, I remember having to ask my dad to beat Crow for me and never getting past Crocodile Cauldron for years. Donkey Kong Country 2 has stuck with me for my whole life, and that's what I love about DK Vine, is finally getting to interact with people who have the series in their hearts the same way. As I grew up, I started to realize there was a lot more to this than met the eye. At first, the monkeys were enough to draw me in, but soon I came to understand the intricacies of the mechanics and the platforming, the emotion in the atmosphere and the music, something Mario never offered me, and it was captivating. I really can't spout out what all this game means to me in the time for one call. It's funny to think that this game that took me years to beat initially I can run through in about a day, with still a bit of difficulty at parts, but it's no less enjoyable every time. I'm about to finally go for my 102% run soon, and I can't wait to hear the rest of the spotlight, and hope you guys maybe throw out a DKC2 theme for the forum soon, as much as I love Half-Life Hijinks. I know this game's pretty much everyone's favorite, but it's for good reason, and I'm glad to be able to celebrate its legacy with all of you. A search for a Donkey Kong Country 2 render was what led me here in the first place. Thanks for the show, for all you do on the site. I'm proud to call myself a DK Viner. Once I get settled in my new home, you better be sending some grain on your way. Some grain on the way to you guys on Patreon. Keep up the good work, guys, as always. Trainer Derek out.
Alright, let's try this again. Right away, Lower here. First time caller. So, when I was a little kid, my grandparents owned a big Explorer van. Basically a big van made for driving trips. In it they had a TV with a VCR and an SNES programmed through the walls of the van. When I was a little kid, we went on a couple trips and I played the hell out of the SNES, and the one game that stuck out to me was DKC. Eventually got an N64 with DK64. Keep in mind, I was born in 1994. 444. Many years later, I want to say when I was 11 or 12, we did a 2-week cross-country road trip traveling from St. Louis, where I live, up to the northwest into Canada, hitting national parks and monuments and whatnot. On the 2-week trip, I had a lot of downtime, so I naturally played the built-in SNES and I played through DKC. I already knew DKC enough. I had it on Game Boy Color. It only took me about a week and a half to play through. So fast forward 1 year, and for the next summer, we were doing a road trip to the northeast, hitting parks and monuments up in New England and area in Canada near Prince Edward Island. For this trip, my mom took me and my brother to the local retail video game shop, and we just got to pick out an SNES game. Naturally, I picked DKC2. Playing through that game for the first time, I had no idea who Dixie even was. It was a completely new experience. It was magical. Something about exploring all new lands of DKC2 while literally exploring all new areas of the world just really cemented DKC2 as a magical experience my first time through. My brother was 2 years younger than me, my sister was only 3 or 4, so a lot of times it was just me playing and my mom watching. My grandparents sat in the front 2 seats, so they didn't know what was going on. And my dad didn't have vacation time, so but in a lot of ways it was me and my mom playing through it. Every time I play through it, a little bit of those memories just seep on up through in my nostalgia. And by the time the credits roll, it really just hit me how much I love that game. Something about the entire experience of the game just floods me with feelings of love for my immediate family and grandparents, and my love for exploring and seeing new places. A trait that has stuck with me as I have grown up and entered college and began traveling around the country following my favorite Grateful Dead-like hippie drug bands. But anyways, It's an amazing game on its own, but I think a large part of why I love the Donkey Kong series so much and why I regard DK2 as my favorite game is that they got me into video games, and in a lot of ways, I have deep memories of exploring America and our neighbors to the north with my loving family that deeply intertwine with my feelings on DK2 as a whole. So, yep, that's it. Bye-bye.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.